Quick question. Which ability do you truly believe is the most broken in all of fiction? Let me know your answer in the comments below. Anyway, on to the video. The story begins with the MC's inner monologue, predicting the dark, somber, and desperate events to come. He states that life is pain. There's no way to escape it. The only choice is to accept this fate and struggle to survive somehow. Even if we find God and resent him, he won't listen. God is just a bystander. No matter what your life looks like, he won't be interested. You're the only one who can change your fate. It's up to you to struggle until the very end. True to the MC's words, we cut immediately to a desperate battle. The sounds of clashing weapons and pleas for help echo through a gloomy room where rivers of blood and mangled body parts litter the floor. Corpses lie scattered, hacked into pieces. Decapitated heads and missing innards not far from their main bodies, as if attempting to complete a grotesque jigsaw. In this chaotic scene, the MC continues his inner monologue. He observes that, while people live differently, the end of their lives is always similar, desperate and violent. Sometimes, living requires more courage than dying. We switch to a warrior fleeing for her life, her hoarse voice pleading for help. However, she quickly meets her end as her arm is torn ruthlessly from her body. Next, a mage unleashes a lightning strike on an obscured enemy, shouting his reluctance to die in this manner. Like the warrior, he dies instantly, his body cleaved in two. Another male warrior wielding a great hammer has his head split open, brain matter splattering everywhere. And yet another warrior is savagely torn apart, helpless against the foe. Finally, the MC yells at the group not to scatter, warning them that the enemy is targeting the lone stragglers. He calls out to Maytal, urging her to limit the enemy's movement. She responds by casting an ice spell, trapping the enemy's legs in a block of ice. Panting and visibly exhausted, Maytal calls out, urging them to hurry, as she can't hold the spell for long. Two comrades, Stepan and Wade, answer her pleas, immediately charging the enemy. Stepan urges Wade to hurry, but Wade retorts, telling Stepan not to give him orders and to focus on his own task. True to their words, the duo blitz past the enemy, tearing off its arms. The grotesque creature shrieks in agony as green, alien blood spurts from its severed limbs. Seeing the immobilized and injured enemy, the rest of the party charges in. They can't afford to give it time to recover. Watching their reckless move, the MC shouts at them to retreat, warning it isn't the right time to attack. But his warning comes too late. The cornered alien responds immediately, growing numerous tentacles from its severed arms that lash out like lethal whips. In a swift motion, it sends them whipping through the battlefield. The result is catastrophic. The reckless party is shredded to pieces as if run through a grinder. Heads are severed, limbs are slashed, and the battlefield becomes a symphony of carnage, with blood and body parts scattered everywhere. As this bloody spectacle unfolds, the surviving members watch in horror. Wade curses the reckless fighters, calling them fools for charging in. Maytal, shocked silent by the gruesome scene, is at a loss for words. The MC takes the lead, instructing everyone to move back. If they rush in carelessly again, more people will die. He resolves to finish the battle himself. With his trusty sword in hand, he charges forward. Noticing him, the alien focuses its lashing tentacles on him, trying to shred him to pieces. But our MC proves formidable, deflecting the alien's attacks with minimal movements as he charges forward. He estimates the tentacles to be about 20 meters long, posing a problem due to their incredible hardness and speed. Without his sword, he would have been shredded ages ago. Realizing he can't keep deflecting the tentacles, he decides to gamble. Activating his active skill, Heist, he swiftly lunges forward, dodging and parrying the tentacles. Finally escaping the deadly tentacles, the MC lunges at the alien, his sword poised to strike. Panicked by his relentlessness, the alien unleashes its trump card. Its grotesque brain splits open to reveal a hidden eye. The eye powers up, preparing a psychic attack. To the MC and the party members' horror, the attack lands, kicking up a windstorm and a cloud of dust. Maytal calls out the MC's name, her voice laced with worry. But her concern is unnecessary. The MC, Jeong Hyeok, narrowly dodged the attack and now hovers above the alien. Wasting no time, he reappears behind the alien, radiating an intense aura. Activating his skill Julian's sword, he slashes the alien in half, and its anguished screams fill the room. Amidst the spurting green blood and spilling innards, Jeong Hyeok strikes a calm pose, having finally ended the desperate battle. The surviving party members cheer, elated to have survived. An aerial view of the battlefield reveals the extent of the desperation, particularly in the aliens' final attack. A system notification sounds, noting the mission's completion. The goal, kill the fast one, has been accomplished, and rewards will be distributed. Random skills or characteristics are offered as the first reward, and 10 souls are awarded as the second. Deeming his task complete, Jeong Hyeok sheaths his sword and instructs the party to take the souls, heal the wounded, and, most importantly, leave before the alien respawns. As they gaze at the mangled corpses of their former comrades, the party feels solemn. More than half of them have been wiped out, all killed from a distance. Wade remarks on the alien's intelligence. It used ranged attacks to keep the party from getting close. Turning to the MC, he calls him amazing for dealing with such a beast. The MC, ever calm, replies that they don't have time for sadness. They must regroup and move to the next room. But his words are cut short by a sharp pain in his back. Turning around, he is shocked to see a sword stabbed through him. Stepan and Maytal, noticing the sudden change, call out his name, worry in their voices. Unbeknownst to them, more backstabbing bastards are creeping up. The backstabber mocks the MC, thanking him for bringing him this far. Without him, he would never have made it. As he gears up to say more, the MC, furious and brimming with killing intent, clasps his palm over the traitor's face, calling him a traitor and promising to kill him. The traitor panics, stuttering that he was just following orders, and calls to Wade for help. The treacherous Wade acts swiftly, drawing his sword and slicing off Jeong Hyeok's arm, shocking him. The rest of the traitors act as well, stabbing the MC with their swords. Now reduced to a bloody mess, the MC collapses, clutching his bleeding stomach. With a livid expression, he questions the traitorous bastards, asking why they did it. Wade replies that they no longer need him and plan to share his soul and advance independently. Hearing their foolish words, the MC mocks them. How do they expect to survive with such trash skills? They clearly don't understand the danger they're in. Wade tells him not to worry about them. He should focus on himself, as he's about to die. The traitors taunt the MC, telling him he has no friends left. And true to their words, the lifeless bodies of Stepan and Maytal lie on the ground, bloody. Pale and disbelieving, Jeong Hyeok stares at his fallen friends. Wade continues his mockery, saying he couldn't risk leaving loose ends. Although he regretted killing Maytal as women were so hard to come by, he had no choice. He tells the MC not to be too sad. Death is inevitable. A traitor bitch approaches with a mace, taunting the MC. He always wanted to be a baseball player, and now he can live that dream, hinting at the Negan treatment. The MC, ignoring the mockery, is filled with rage. He mutters that he can't let it end this way. He can't accept this outcome. As the mace swings for his head, he suddenly roars in anger, lunging at the traitor. Using only his teeth, he bites a chunk out of the man's neck. Wade panics, yelling at his men to stop the MC before he can use his skills. But the MC is already fighting back. He draws his sword and decapitates one of the traitors. He turns swiftly, chopping off another's head, blood spraying around him. Before the head lands, another traitor stabs him in the back. Ignoring the wound, the MC decapitates this traitor too. One of Wade's main fighters lunges, slicing off Jeong Hyeok's remaining hand. Seeing the MC's weakened state, Wade steps in, determined to finish him. With a swift swing, Wade beheads Jeong Hyeok, sending his head flying. The MC's severed head rolls on the ground before finally coming to a halt. His eyes remain open, his defiance evident. Panting and exhausted, Wade curses the MC for fighting so relentlessly. But it's over now. There's no coming back from a severed head. Observing their fallen comrades, the traitors lament their dwindling numbers, but decide to push forward. In this brutal world, they can only keep fighting. Wade glances at Jeong Hyeok's body, conceding that he might have been the one to end their shared hell. The scene shifts back to the MC's severed head. In his fading consciousness, he curses the traitors, bitter over his unfinished battle. He regrets not avenging Stepan and Maytal. As his life slips away, he laments how close he came to ending it all. But, in a shocking twist, he awakens, his eyes shooting open. Confused and frustrated, he realizes he's still trapped in this endless hell, where even death offers no escape. Lag. Taking a moment to reflect on his disastrous situation, Jeong Hyeok lies motionless on the floor. All around him, the bleak walls mirror his current state. Bleak and listless. Everything is the same, even the cursed word, lag, written ominously in blood on the wall. Suddenly, as if coming to terms with his bleak predicament, he yells. His anguished voice reverberates throughout the tiny room. He curses and yells, repeatedly striking the floor in rage. Those backstabbing motherfuckers. He promises to kill them all. After what feels like an eternity, his rage finally subsides, leaving only his labored breathing. Nothing would change even if he screamed and made a fuss. His saviors, his enemies, he wouldn't get to meet them again. That was the nature of the hell he was in. Turns out this wasn't the first time he'd died. Death wasn't new to him. After multiple repetitions, you'd think he'd be numb to it by now. But you'd be wrong. Far from getting used to it, living in that hellish place only kept getting worse and worse. Gritting his teeth in frustration, he laments having failed again. It's always failure after failure, again and again, like a curse. Welling up with rage, he punches the wall, hoping to vent his frustration. This choice, however, proves foolish, as the pain from his stunt soon follows. Holding his throbbing hand, he notes that he hasn't awakened yet, hence the pain. Gazing around the gloomy and cursed first floor, a space covered in dark blue light, he laments that he hasn't been here in a while. We learn that the first floor is always the same. The only difference is whether he's alone or with others. Walking toward a nearby wall, he feels around its surface, seemingly searching for something. After a bit of rummaging, he finally notices a hidden compartment in the wall. Pressing it opens a secret door on the opposite wall. A doorway to another hell. Cursing the difficulty from the start, he promises to kill whichever psychopath hid that switch on the wall. During his earlier regressions, he was unaware of the secret switch, so he died repeatedly on the first floor, killed by starvation and dehydration. The situation was even worse when other people were around. Not only did they fight and kill each other, but they were also forced to eat each other. He had died countless times, killed by someone else's hand. Before the awakening, he was nothing more than an ordinary Korean man. As such, his failure to secure an exit led to countless deaths in that room, and upon each death, he would be revived again and again, only to die all over again. Staring somberly at the cursed name Lag, Jeong Hyeok comments on loathing it. He doesn't know what it means or stands for, but just like the word lag, he feels like his life is lagging. However, all that is not important. What actually matters is surviving and hopefully getting the hell out of there. He's grown tired of the repeated deaths and doesn't want to do it anymore. Resolving himself, he walks into the light, ready to face his bleak future head-on. What greets him beyond the white radiance is a wide white room, all but empty except for the red structure in the middle. The red structure turns out to be a bizarre combination of cubes, humming ominously in the quiet room. The MC takes a moment to reaffirm his resolve, breathing deeply to calm his nerves. Without further hesitation, he swiftly places his palm on the metallic interface standing before the cube. As the mysterious structure boots up, a system panel appears, identifying him as player Jeong Hyeok. After confirming his identity, it immediately begins the awakening process. With the awakening, intense pain follows, causing our boy to groan in agony. The pain, however, swiftly passes, disappearing as quickly as it arrived. As the system announces the completion of the awakening, he receives multiple messages informing him of the subsequent random allocation of skills. And true to the notifications, he immediately receives the active skills Light and Flame, as well as the passive skills Pant and Bare-Handed Combat. With the task done, the system informs him of the final goal. He is to reach the lowest basement level. Our boy, however, doesn't move, choosing instead to analyze his character screen. He has received the active skills Light Level 1 and Flame Level 1. As for the passive skills, Pant and Bare-Handed Combat are also Level 1. Scrolling further down, he finds more information. His public attributes state that he'll be limited to only 2 active skills. However, as compensation, his private attribute states that he can have an infinite number of passive skills. This revelation greatly shocks Jeong Hyeok, his eyes widening at the news. His shock is warranted, as usually, you'd get around 10 active skills, and the passive skills were always fixed at 2. This had been the case throughout his countless regressions, a fact that never changed. So, what the hell was going on? Although it could be fatal to only have 2 active skills, the idea of having an infinite number of passive skills is truly outrageous. Jeong Hyeok can't help but don a maniacal smile just thinking of the possibilities. His thoughts, however, are interrupted by a system prompt informing him of the random generation of a weapon. Our boy gazes intensely at the swirling blue vortex, hoping to get something good. Through sheer luck, something good actually comes out. A strong mini pickaxe, boosting muscle strength by 1%. As he swings the pickaxe around, the MC laments the absolute garbage he received in some of his previous regressions. Items that only led to his untimely demise. Seriously though, how are you supposed to fight with a pack of condoms? With his business done, he resolutely walks toward the next room. It's a full-fledged start, one he's determined to see through to the end. Emerging through the dimly lit hallway, our boy is faced with 2 choices. Basement level 1, room 1, and basement level 1, room 2. In his past regressions, he'd opted for room 1, but this time, he resolutely chooses room 2, deeming it much better. Walking through the door, he descends a seemingly endless flight of stairs, leading down to the abyss. After what seems like an eternity, he finally reaches flat ground, albeit shrouded in darkness. Utilizing his light skill, he shines a ray of light across the room, confirming his intended destination. Room 2. He's finally here. With a grim look, he resolutely walks through the door, which closes behind him soon after. There's no going back anymore. After entering a room and having the door close behind you, retreat is impossible. The only choices are success or death. A system prompt soon follows, acknowledging his entry into room 2. It further highlights the details of the room. The common mission, although for beginners, is noted as not easy. His goal is to eliminate the monster, a zombie, in the room. The first reward upon completion is a random skill, or a random skill level up. The second reward is random equipment, or the key to basement level 2, room 1. We get a bit of info about room 2. It's a pitch-black space where one can't see an inch ahead. Maintaining absolute silence is paramount to surviving the trial. In addition, sticking close to the wall is also necessary, as it reduces the range of defense as much as possible. As he traverses the ominously dark space, Jeong Hyeok remarks on knowing what lurks in the space very well. With his senses heightened, he listens for any sounds in the dark, searching for his prey. Picking up on some distant clatters, he immediately goes on high alert, waiting for the incoming clash. The sounds turn out to be the clattering teeth of zombies, inching closer to his position, drawn to the scent of his vitality. The MC, picking up on their ambush, immediately activates his light skill, shining a light before him. And as he expected, there they are. The zombies, beings with strong jaws capable of breaking bones with a single bite. Jeong Hyeok remarks on the only upside to these vermin, their slow movements. With his light skill still active, he somberly watches as the zombies inch closer and closer to him. Taking an attacking stance, he eagerly urges them to get closer. The zombies, as if responding to his wish, stagger toward him, their sharp fangs clattering. Our boy, still in his fighting stance, remains completely focused despite the zombies' slow approach. Just as they cross the 5-step mark, the zombies make an unexpected move, swiftly lunging at the MC, their earlier slow movements gone. Jeong Hyeok, having anticipated this, doesn't panic. He swiftly swings his pickaxe, striking a zombie in the head. The blow is strong enough to send the zombie crashing into a nearby wall. With 2 enemies remaining, he immediately resumes his attacking stance. Inwardly, he notes the zombies' weakness, their heads. No matter how many parts you destroy, they keep coming, unrelenting, until their heads are destroyed. In the past, there were many times he was beaten by zombies with only their heads left, eventually dying pathetically. In addition to their semi-invulnerability, their movements are more complex than expected. They move slowly at first, only to suddenly attack at close range, making it very difficult to react if it's your first time. However, our boy isn't a beginner. With his palm raised, he activates his second skill, Flame Level 1. A crimson flame shoots from his palm, engulfing the charging zombies. As he watches the burning zombies, our boy reflects on why he chose the second room. It was due to his pickaxe and flame skill. Zombies are vulnerable to fire, and when their heads are struck, it effectively puts an end to them. Activating his light skill, he continues his search around the room. The room clear notification hasn't sounded yet, meaning there are still some zombies hiding somewhere. Picking up on a clattering sound behind him, Jeong Hyeok immediately turns, only to come face to face with a charging zombie. The infant zombie, thirsty for his blood, lunges at our boy, its sharp fangs just inches from his face. Our MC, not one to hesitate, swiftly swings his pickaxe, killing it instantly. There is no reason to hesitate. The monsters are no longer human. With his task completed, he pulls back his pickaxe, ripping the zombie's head off, in the process. Gazing at the grotesque creature, he remarks on never seeing one so tiny before. Was that why he didn't pick up on its movements until it got so close? The system notification sounds again, bringing with it the clear confirmation. It states that the Room 2 mission is over. Jeong Hyeok was the only participant, contributing 100%. As a reward, he is to choose between randomly acquiring a skill or having an existing skill randomly level up. The second reward is random equipment, or the key to B2, Room 1. Not wasting time, Jeong Hyeok immediately makes his choice. Soon the system sounds again, informing him of the successful acquisition of the passive skill Tough Skin Level 1 and the acquisition of the key to B2, Room 1. As he watches the key materialize, he remarks on his luck. If the skill had turned out to be an active one of his original skills would have been lost. So far, he has 3 passive skills. Pant Level 1, which speeds up his recovery rate. Barehanded Combat Level 1, which boosts his barehanded fighting skills. And finally, Tough Skin Level 1, which makes his skin tougher. Holding the key in his hand, he acknowledges his good luck in this regression. Not only is this his first time getting 3 passive skills, but they are also skills he can keep until the very end. Since physical ability is mostly affected by passive skills, and he can have an infinite number of such passive skills, there is definitely potential in this regression. He will keep forging forward, and with his new abilities, he's resolute to do it. He'll definitely conquer this hellish game, or die trying. Armed with the rewards from Room 2, our boy wastes no time challenging his next hell. Before him stands the door to 2 separate rooms. Basement Level 2, Room 1, and Basement Level 2, Room 2. To enter Room 1, he needs a special key, which can only be obtained by clearing B1, Room 2. As for the doorway to B2, Room 2, that's a freebie for everyone, as it doesn't require a key for entry. With a somber expression, our boy laments not remembering the exact details of all the cursed rooms in L.A.G. However, he's more than familiar with the first few. It's probably where he got his cheeks clapped the most. We learn that in the case of B1, Room 1, the room is bright, and only 1 or 2 zombies appear, unlike the cursed Room 2, where you have to fight in total darkness. However, there's a price for this reduced difficulty. The reward is minimal. Room 2 is obviously more difficult, but as a reward, you get the special key to access B2, Room 1. With a resolute expression, our boy bravely enters B2, Room 1, ready for whatever shitshow he'll face. As he makes his way down another seemingly endless flight of stairs, he reflects on why he chose the key as a reward rather than a piece of equipment. He's confident he can succeed in the mission for B2, Room 1. Another juicy incentive is that the reward is pretty good. Turning the knob for the room in question, our boy is met with another system notification. Player Lee Jeong Hyeok, the Chad has entered Room 1. The public mission for the room is to kill the bug behind the wall. The goal is to kill monsters from B2, Room 1, Space 1. As for the rewards, the first reward is speed boots, and the second is a random level up of one of his skills. Gazing at the loathsome notification, our boy laments the absurd difficulty. It's just 1 floor down, yet the challenge is already ridiculous, and they didn't even specify which monster he's to catch. As a point of reference, we get a better understanding of the structure of L.A.G. In this case, B2 means the second basement floor. The one in the middle refers to the exact room on that floor. And finally, the one at the end specifies which space in that room. For my fellow Chads, this basically means that inside a basement floor, there's 1 or more rooms. And inside those rooms, there are 1 or more spaces. Our boy reflects that so far, things are pretty good. Not to mention he already knows everything about the first few rooms. What bothers him, however, is the scene playing out before him. A man sits against the wall, seemingly asleep. This new addition to the party is player Kim Tae-min. His public attribute is breathing underwater, and his highest skill level is 2. Gazing at the sleeping dude, our boy can't help but wonder what the fuck is up with him. Even in such a situation, the dude is sleeping? Is he teasing death or something? As if sensing his gaze, Tae-min startles awake. Upon noticing the strange man staring at him, he almost shits his pants in fright. We also get an interesting new detail about the system of L.A.G. Everyone in the cursed game has access to certain information about the other participants. They can freely view the name, public attributes, and highest skill level of other players. For our boy, it shows his name, his public attribute. He can only have up to 2 active skills, and his highest skill level, which is currently 1. As expected, Tae-min is a bit taken aback. It's mostly due to the sudden arrival of the MC, but I'd like to believe it's because our boy has that alpha dog in him, rendering Tae-min speechless. All in all, there's a tense silence in the room as the two analyze each other. Our boy notices the hammer Tae-min is holding. From his memories, he identifies it as an item that boosts strength. The hammer is now covered in blood, hinting that it has been used recently. Finally breaking the ice, our boy questions Tae-min, asking him what the hell he's doing. The man, a fumbling mess, barely manages a reply through his constant stammering. Fed up with the nonsense, our boy tells Tae-min to speak properly. Tae-min finally pulls himself together and explains that he fell asleep while waiting for someone to arrive. Taking a moment to analyze the strange fellow, our boy notes it's unlikely that Tae-min passed B1, room 1, since he'd need the special key from room 2 to access this room. His scrawny appearance also doesn't suggest he defeated zombies in room 2. However, if that's the case, he shouldn't be here since he wouldn't have a key. All in all, the dude is hella suspicious. Our boy wonders if there was a third party who went into room 1, space 1 first, or maybe came down from B1, room 2. Drawing our boy from his thoughts, Tae-min replies that he was waiting for him. Jeong Hyeok, a bit puzzled, asks what he means. Tae-min explains that he had been partnered with someone upstairs. They had managed to survive the mission, but ultimately, the zombies got his partner. He tried to help, but he was helpless in the situation. Our boy, already piecing things together, replies that Tae-min must have survived somehow, and here he is. Tae-min confirms this, saying he came down in a hurry. I'm calling it now. This dude is hella suspicious. Just look at that teabag-like face. Tae-min goes on to explain that upon his arrival on B2, he didn't have the guts to go in alone, so he's been waiting for someone to venture in together. The MC, having picked up on something, replies simply, I see. Without wasting more time, he immediately heads toward the next room, casually reminding Tae-min to do whatever he wants. He can wait for someone else, or follow him inside. Flustered, Tae-min shouts at him to hold on. However, when he notices Jeong Hyeok has no intention of waiting, he decides to follow him into the room. To hell with caution, it's time to make moves. The system notification soon sounds, stating that players Jeong Hyeok and Tae-min have both entered B2, room 1, space 1. Having entered the new room, the boys are taken aback. Rather, Tae-min is taken aback. Our boy remains as nonchalant as ever. Having lived through multiple regressions, there are few things that surprise him. However, he understands how seeing such a sight for the first time could leave someone flustered. And true to his thoughts, the sight is indeed surprising. There's a forest inside the room. As for the sky above, it's hard to determine whether it's real or fake, but all he knows is that there's no ceiling. Grass grows on the floor and trees rise. No matter how you look at it, it's literally a forest. Though mesmerizing, our boy doesn't plan to stand around and ogle like a fool. Moves have to be made. He immediately starts walking toward the forest, an action that greatly shocks Tae-min. Flustered, Tae-min calls out, urging him to hold up. Does he not find the situation suspicious? They had been trapped inside a building, and now they're inside a forest. The whole thing doesn't seem right at all. After listening to his rant, our boy casually replies, sure, it's suspicious, but what does he expect him to do about it? Even if he asked, he doesn't know where they are or why they're here. The situation is already happening, and it's a waste of time to sit around with useless questions. The only move left is to forge ahead and hopefully secure the best chance of survival. Tae-min, unsatisfied with the MC's reaction, urges him to talk more about the situation. Our boy, however, shuts him down. Sitting around talking won't yield answers. life isn't that easy. The goal is clear. They must reach the lowest basement floor. The only thing they need to focus on to maybe get out of this hell. With that, he forges forward. If Taemin needs someone to sympathize with, he can look elsewhere. But Jeong Hyeok isn't that person. Besides, he never asked Taemin to follow him. Taken aback, Taemin watches somberly as the MC puts distance between them. From the look on his face, it's clear this teabag-looking motherfucker is up to no good. Snapping out of his suspicious thoughts, Taemin catches up to the MC and apologizes, admitting he was thinking of useless things during their dire predicament. Jeong Hyeok waves off his apology, telling him that if he has time to talk, he should also pay attention to the forest ahead. They don't know when or where the monster will appear. We cut to the boys making their way through the gloomy, foggy forest. Though massive, it's eerily empty and quiet, adding an extra layer of dread to the already dodgy situation. After what seems like an eternity of treading in silence, Jeong Hyeok finally stops, his gaze fixed on an obscured entity in a nearby tree. Taemin, picking up on his strange behavior, asks what's wrong. Our boy, however, doesn't answer, his focus on the creature only he sees. He wondered how many of the vermin were secretly hidden in the forest. Not getting the answer he expected, Taemin traced Jeong Hyeok's line of sight, trying to figure out what had the Chad all hot and bothered. The answer, however, wasn't one he wanted to know about. Camouflaged on the tree was a monstrous wooden spider, its characteristic being that its whole body was as hard as wood, and currently, its highest skill level was 1. As expected, Taemin freaked out, scared shitless by the strange abomination. Our Chad, however, was as cool as ever, telling him to be quiet. The monster, noticing the two new prey, immediately sprang into action. Without any wasted movements, it lunged at the boys, its massive body casting an eerie shadow on the terrified faces of the duo. With a mighty thud, it landed before the boys, the force of the collision kicking up a dust storm. The boys had no choice but to clumsily leap backward, barely dodging the attack. After all the dust settled, we finally got a clear view of the monstrous spider, and it was a nightmare. With a body as huge as a truck and an almost impenetrable carapace, the fiend was anyone's worst nightmare come true. Damn, I'm developing arachnophobia just looking at it. Our boy, however, was built differently. Despite the monstrosity before him, his attention was drawn to Taemin instead. He noted that Taemin's movements were better than he expected. Even if someone awakens an ability, it varies widely, depending on the person who uses it. As such, the strange fellow was a real enigma. He was scrawny, yet appeared capable. Something just didn't add up about him. The spider, however, wasn't going to sit around and wait for him to figure out his suspicions. Identifying him as its target, it immediately charged at our boy. Jeong Hyeok thought back to some of his earlier regressions when he had unfortunately gone up against the spider and, unsurprisingly, lost pathetically. When caught in the spider's leg, the human body easily breaks in two. However, no matter how powerful the attack was, it only mattered if he got hit by it. As such, our boy bravely faced the spider, unfazed by its menacing charge. Crunched into his fighting stance, he waited for the behemoth to make its move. Although it was indeed fast, it wasn't something he couldn't avoid. Besides, he wasn't a normal human anymore. He was awakened, a being that far surpassed the regular limits of mundane humans. The MC demonstrates this by easily weaving and dodging the spider monster's sharp legs. No matter how much it tried, it just couldn't reach the elusive MC. Although the exact nature of the awakening is unknown, it is clear that it is a change meant to make the participants more suitable for survival in the treacherous game. L.A.G. Their physical abilities improve, and most importantly, they gain the ability to use skills. The MC shows off the full extent of his awakening by easily dodging the spider's claw attack. With nimble movements, he runs up a tree before doing a backflip, swiftly lunging at the spider for his counterattack. Taemin, like a wolf waiting to pounce, watches all of his moves with a somber expression. This shady bastard is definitely up to something. The MC, completely oblivious to the ominous developments, continues his fight against the spider. From his aerial position, he jumps onto the spider, delivering a deadly attack on its leg. Reeling from the impact, the spider shrieks in pain, throwing the MC off its body. Jeong Hyeok, skidding to a stop, gazed sternly at the spider. As expected, its carapace is ridiculously hard. the fight won't end so quickly. Unbeknownst to him, the treacherous Tae-min was secretly lunging at him, poised to deliver a sneak attack. I knew it. This teabag-looking motherfucker was definitely up to no good. I definitely called it. With his eyes screaming murder, the treacherous Tae-min charges forward, his hammer raised, poised to attack. Our boy, finally picking up on the silent ambush, turns wearily to face Tae-min. However, to my shock, the bastard actually directs his attack at the spider, not our boy. Activating his active skill, explosive attack, the suspicious Tae-min delivers a devastating blow to the spider's legs, blowing them to smithereens. Jeong Hyeok, just as puzzled as I am about Tae-min's interference, thinks to himself that it was unexpected. He'd thought the sassy bastard would just be an observer in the fight. Nevertheless, now wasn't the time to mull over such things. Capitalizing on the opening created by Tae-min, our boy charges in again, craving some spider cheeks to clap. He performs a leap attack, landing a solid hit on the monster's leg, followed by a backward dodge, barely avoiding the spider's counterattack. Skidding to a stop, Jeong Hyeok faces the spider head-on, no fear visible in his Chad face. Analyzing his foe, he notices a crack in its almost indestructible carapace. Finally, a chance for a lethal attack has opened up. Wasting no time, Jeong Hyeok stealthily creeps up on the spider and, in a single swift strike, obliterates its leg. The bastard Tae-min also joins the fray, delivering numerous explosive attacks on the beast. The monster, left reeling from the attacks, shrieks pathetically, its once majestic carapace now reduced to a mangled burning mess. Taking advantage of the beast's immobility, the MC charges back in, planning to finally put an end to the vermin. Leaping onto the spider's carapace, our boy charges up a devastating attack, his muscles tensed in preparation for the ensuing carnage. And he doesn't disappoint. He unleashes a barrage of attacks on the spider, his movements so swift and agile that afterimages are left in his wake. The endless blows continue. The once devastated battlefield is now reduced to a symphony of thrashing and shrieking sounds. Finally, the beast succumbs to the MC's relentless attacks, collapsing loudly and breathing its last. With his enemy felled, the MC calmly rises, his trusty pickaxe squarely tucked away. The bastard Tae-min also survived the battle, although barely, judging by his labored breath. Jeong Hyeok analyzes the strange fellow, noting his lack of passive skills that offer physical reinforcements. However, he seems to be capable of continuously using his active skills, even if it's detrimental to his stamina. In addition, the sassy bastard absolutely sucks at combat. But he does make up for it with a high-level skill, probably even higher in level than Jeong Hyeok's. All in all, the bastard is one to be wary of, especially since the previous naive and timid face he portrayed strangely disappeared when he was fighting, and his real nature was revealed. The fact that the bastard can use that much power on the second floor means he'll probably be strong in the future. The MC is determined to secure his help, even if he has to be a bit forceful about it. But all that aside, the real reason he's keeping the sus bastard around, despite knowing how dangerous he could be, is because he's confident in his ability to kill him anytime he wants, should he deem it necessary. We cut to the boys walking in the forest, and as expected, Tae-min is yapping non-stop. He questions the MC about their destination, but our boy just ignores him. Not getting a reply, he calls out to Jeong Hyeok again. The MC, frustrated by his constant yapping, asks him what he expects them to do. Should they stay there? He lets him know that the battle caused quite a commotion. Other predators must have heard it, and are currently heading in that direction. If he still wishes to stay, he's welcome to try. Tae-min expresses his understanding, but he still wants to know their intended destination. Our boy, finally fed up with his constant questions and yapping, tells him to be quiet if he wishes to follow him. Tae-min quickly agrees, his meek demeanor returning. This sudden change doesn't go unnoticed by the MC. He's seen through the mask Tae-min is wearing. In L.A.G, everyone acts to deceive each other. It's a constant game of deception. Jeong Hyeok's thoughts are interrupted by a sudden ruckus from behind him. Gazing at the new guests, he laments that it's too late to make a safe getaway. The worst possible scenario has indeed happened. They've been flocked by a clutter of spiders. If you thought the lone beast was dreadful, try imagining a whole group of them, all thirsty for your blood. Tae-min, scared shitless, asks what they should do. Our boy responds to the idiotic question, they should run like hell. And true to his words, the boys haul some cheeks, with a clutter of spiders hot on their trail. The pursuit continues through the middle of the woods, then the path to the left, followed by the path to the right. The spiders just weren't letting up, and the boys had no option but to run like their lives depended on it, because they did. Finally, our boy notices that things can't continue like that. They will soon be swarmed, and he needs to do something before that happens. With a plan in mind, he immediately makes his way to a clearing beyond the forest. Tae-min, the noisy bastard, is quick to complain, shouting that the MC has led them to a dead end. Shouldn't they be looking for a door to the next floor, or maybe another way to get to the third basement floor? Jeong Hyeok, enraged, grabs the motherfucker by the face. With a chilling look, he tells him to shut his stinking mouth. Tae-min, dreading his doom, immediately apologizes. With a gentler tone, he voices his argument, noting that the spiders will soon catch up and they're trapped in a dead end. The MC ignores him. He's busy trying to calm his fury. He had almost killed the bastard out of anger. Looks like keeping the treacherous jerk alive will be harder than our boy thought. We cut to some general info about room B211. Although it seems like a vast forest, it's actually not infinite. Our boy intends to use that feature, along with the fact that the spiders will come hunting for them, to launch his counterattack. Activating his flame skill, he sets fire to a tree. He also instructs Tae-min to do the same using his explosive attack. The goal is to set fire to the whole forest. Obviously, the noisy bastard complains, but the MC tells him to shut up and do as he's told. Tae-min, still scared of our boy, decides to keep his head down and follow orders. With his trusty hammer, he strikes the trees, setting them ablaze. The embers from his attack spread wide, setting the nearby trees on fire. In just a couple of minutes, the fire blooms into a huge inferno, unstoppable in its spread. Tae-min asks why they did that. If the fire spreads, they'll be in danger too. Jeong Hyeok doesn't answer, seemingly waiting for him to figure things out on his own. Any further attempts by Tae-min to get clarification from him are met with a quick jab to the face, serves him right. Soon, however, the plan becomes obvious. The monstrous spiders, hidden and lurking in the forest, are set ablaze as well. Their dying shrieks echo in the forest as they fall. Under the somber gaze of our boy and the shocked expression on Tae Bastard's face, the spiders die, helpless as they burn alive. A system notification soon sounds. The mission is complete. The goal of killing the wooden spider is achieved, and the rewards will be given to player Lee Jeong Hyeok. He contributed 94%, while Tae Bastard contributed 6%. As such, Jeong Hyeok will be rewarded with speed boots as his first reward, and a random skill level up as his second reward. The MC explains that each mission has a minimum condition for receiving compensation. Even if you contribute toward the mission, if it's too low, you won't be rewarded. He reflects that the mission was only easy because of the nature of the room and spiders. They have a habit of tracking their prey down, so it wasn't difficult to lure them into a trap. Plus, their bodies are made of wood, so they burn pretty easily. We switch to our boy getting his rewards, the speed boots, which increase his speed by 5%, as well as a level up of his bare-handed fighting skill to level 2. He comments that everything seems to be going great. The boots are fantastic, and the skill level up is great too. The only problem he can point out is his horrible crime against fashion. Turning his attention to the stalking Tae-min, he asks him why he's staring so much. The latter asks if everything is over now. Jeong Hyeok calmly replies that if the system notification indicates it's over, then it's over. He has to quickly adapt if he wants to survive. Walking away from the bastard, he dives into his future plans. There are certain things he needs to acquire before moving forward. We don't know exactly what they are, but he's a regressor, so I'm sure he has something cooking. Behind him, the suspicious Tae-min is giving him the treacherous look again. I might have been wrong the last time, but my gut is telling me this bastard is up to something. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. We cut to the raging inferno finally dying down, leaving only its embers stubbornly clinging to life in the otherwise eerie, smoky forest. The boys, now free to move around, walk through the burnt battlefield, seemingly searching for something. Jeong Hyeok, taking a moment from his search, gazes suspiciously at Tae-min, his inner thoughts too cryptic to decipher. Maybe, like me, he's already caught a whiff of Tae Bastard's treacherous smell. Anyway, he decides to put that aside for now and continue on with his search. As he searches thoroughly through the battlefield, we learn more about the lore of the cursed game, L.A.G. Apparently, clearing missions isn't the only way to get rewarded in the death game. You can also get rewards for killing monsters, one of which is a soul. True to the lore, our boy finally finds what he's been looking for. a strange, luminous orb floating gently above a charred spider corpse. This is the soul. In L.A.G, souls essentially act as skill points. By collecting them, players can raise the level of their skills. Of course, depending on the skill type and level, several souls might be needed to level up. We get a glimpse of this when a system notification pops up, informing the MC that he needs 2 souls to level up his bare-handed fighting skill to level 3. Since souls serve as a kind of skill point, they can be collected and stored in the body, only to be used when the player decides to do so. Players can also take them out of the body and use them for transactions. All in all, souls are very vital for survival in L.A.G, serving as both a means to get stronger and as currency. Done with the lore dump, Jeong Hyeok looks around the battlefield, searching for any souls he might have missed. His attention, however, is drawn to the bastard Tae-min, who is actively trying to steal a soul for himself. The treacherous bastard, arms outstretched, eagerly tries to absorb a soul, his greed palpable. Our boy, with a knowing grin, mocks the bastard, inwardly remarking that it's impossible for Tae-min to absorb the soul. And true to his words, the thieving scumbag is met with a system notification informing him that there are still 3 hours left before the soul is released. We learn that in L.A.G, souls are owned by the player who made the most outstanding contribution in killing the monster. This privilege lasts for 4 hours, and it's impossible for anyone to steal the soul during that time. The only way someone else can take the soul is if the 4-hour time limit runs out, or if the owner actively transfers ownership. Although the system mechanics for L.A.G are interesting, they can't compare to the look on Tae Bastard's face. This motherfucker actually thought he could steal a soul. The look on his face is priceless, especially with the mocking grin on our boy's face. Of course, there's another system mechanic for owning souls, one that, although ominous, is still valid. We get a hint of it by looking at the crazed expression on Tae-min. It seems the bastard has finally decided to show his true colors. Our boy, seemingly oblivious to the enraged bastard fuming behind him, casually dives into his inner thoughts, planning his next moves. He currently has 2 souls, and it's about time he heads to the next room. But before that, there's something he needs to take care of. Coming to a stop, we see an extra pair of legs charging toward him. Ladies and gentlemen, the long-awaited moment has finally arrived. Tae Bastard, just as I predicted, lunges at our boy, his treacherous hands poised for backstabbing. I knew it. I told you guys this teabag-looking motherfucker could not be trusted. Nobody who looks this treacherous can ever be trusted. With his hammer brimming with power, Tae Bastard activates his skill, explosive attack, swinging it decisively at our boy. Blood splatters in the wake of the attack, and the camera zooms out, almost as if scared to show the result of the cowardly betrayal. Eventually, however, it zooms back in, revealing the outcome of the attack, and it is glorious. Our boy, with a move reminiscent of Neo from The Matrix, blitzes the fuck out of Tae-min, his pickaxe stabbed squarely through his neck. In a grotesque manner, the treacherous bastard coughs up a mouthful of blood, his eyes slowly rolling back in death. Our boy mocks him, teasing that he must be curious to know how he predicted the betrayal. He tells Tae-min he should have cleaned the blood off the hammer when they first met. Yanking the pickaxe from Tae-min's neck, he laughs at him. Tae Bastard had thought he could use the MC and kill him afterward, but he'd been playing right into his hands the entire time. Watching the treacherous bastard choke on his blood, our boy tells him that fools like him are common in L.A.G, and that unfortunately he's died many times because of them. So much so that he's tired of it. Without any mercy, he decisively swings his pickaxe, stabbing Tae-min through the skull and ending his pathetic life. We learn that one reason for the low survival rate in L.A.G is that humans, just like monsters, also produce a soul when killed. As such, some players in the death game hunt not only monsters, but humans as well. Tae-min was such a person, the type to hide his true self, use others, and do anything for his own benefit. From the moment they met, the MC had suspected him. Currently, they were on the 2nd floor, and zombies do not bleed, which means the blood on Tae-min's hammer must have come from a person. Additionally, as they were searching through the battlefield, it was clear that Tae Bastard was aware of the existence of souls. Zombies on the 1st floor don't have souls, so he must have killed someone and stolen theirs. Like the coward he was, he probably aimed for his partner's head after killing the zombies. But all in all, the bastard is dead now, even being used after his death. Thanks to him, our boy now has 3 souls to his name. Speaking of being used, it's funny how Tae-min died on all fours like a dog. Dude will be crossing to the afterlife, ready for backshots. What a fitting end for the bastard. Jeong Hyeok reflects on how he was able to outsmart Tae-min. He was already familiar with such situations. Through his countless regressions, he's dealt with people like that many times, often dying pathetically because of them. He's tired of that kind of death, so he's determined to focus solely on his survival. To make it out of L.A.G alive, he's prepared to do whatever it takes. The death game is a place where not only the strong survive, but where the survivors are also strong, and he's determined to be one of them. We cut to him equipping Tae-min's hammer. The hammer turns out to be a relic that boosts strength by 1.2%. Although his fashion sense is terrible, and he looks like an engineer, his current loadout is pretty decent. In some of his previous regressions, he made it to the 6th basement floor with nothing but a crowbar, so he's doing pretty well right now. However, getting more equipment quickly is essential. In addition, he also needs to level up his skills. With his current gear and skills, it'll be a hustle to fight monsters. But he can't rush it. In the cursed game, impatience leads to mistakes, and mistakes only lead to a pathetic death. He has to tackle every situation with a calm mind. Saying so, he places his hand on the door leading to the next room. The door to basement level 2, room 1, space 2 slides open with a gentle swoosh. Behind it lies a long corridor leading into darkness. Our boy, not one to hesitate, resolutely walks through the door, which immediately shuts behind him. The system notification soon sounds, announcing that player Lee Jeong Hyeok has entered B212. Our boy ignores the notification and calmly proceeds forward. At the end of the long corridor lies another room, with doors on all its sides. We learn that B212 is a lobby or restroom of sorts, a place where players can rest and reorganize. One door leads to basement level 2, room 1, space 3, likely another trial room. Another door leads to a shower, just in case you want to be fresh before you die. The final door leads to L.A.G, whatever that is. Our boy, clearly having more information than I do, decides to visit the third room first. Pushing open the door, he enters the L.A.G room. Behind it lies a mysterious, spooky phantom, a vendor of L.A.G. Jeong Hyeok notes that although he's used to seeing them, they somehow always make him feel uneasy. We learn that these vendors are forever silent, almost like virtual apparitions without any substance. However, that doesn't mean they can be touched recklessly. In one of his past regressions, a companion of his fucked around and found out. The blonde Chad had foolishly waved his hand into the vendor's image, and, let's just say, he got a very bloody surprise. Although surprising, such rash idiots are bound to die early anyway. Back to the mysterious vendor, our boy notes that they don't appear on every floor, so it's important to make use of them whenever possible. Approaching the phantom trader, Jeong Hyeok instructs it to show the equipment in its inventory. The mysterious trader immediately complies. With its arms spread out, it opens a pocket space showcasing its entire collection, and there's some good stuff in there. Trading with these vendors is simple. Because of the nature of their inventory, you can discern the equipment's attributes just by looking at it. Our boy, having browsed enough, asks to view the armor as well. The vendor, ever silent, complies, showcasing its collection. Jeong Hyeok, with a serious face, ponders what he can afford with his current collection of souls. With his mind made up, he immediately points to his selection, ready to complete the trade. The silent vendor stares at our boy for a moment before springing into action. First, it closes the inventory, then swiftly extends its long arm toward him. The gesture is simple, easily recognizable to anyone. Money first, bitch. In this case, money means souls. Each piece of equipment he picked out costs 1 soul, so he has enough to pay for all his drip. The ghostly vendor acknowledges his payment with a gentle nod before immediately retrieving the souls. Judging by how quickly it took the souls, it seems there are plenty of diners and dashers in L.A.G, which is actually quite funny if you think about it. Soon the silent vendor unveils our boy's purchase, a jacket, trousers, and a belt. The elastic jacket, as it's called by the system, increases muscle strength and agility by 2%. The same is true for the elastic pants. The leather hipsack, although a silly name since it's clearly a belt, boosts the speed of physical recovery by 2%, so it's also good equipment. Using telekinesis, the vendor hands over the purchased equipment to our boy, who wastes no time rocking them. First, the belt. Leather hipsack. Then the jacket. All in all, our boy is now officially dripped out, drippy beyond reason. With their official business done, the vendor surprises our boy with some extra provisions. cooked meat and water, a kind of after-sales service. Even if the cursed game is trying to kill him, customer service is still important. Make sure to rate vendor chat on Yelp real quick. Under the gentle bow of the silent vendor, Jeong Hyeok leaves the room. At first, he didn't know what kind of meat the vendor gave him. Pause. That was hella sus. Anyway, he was unfamiliar with the vendor's meat, so he was hesitant to eat it. Now, however, he knows exactly what kind of meat it is. Taurus meat. With his current strength, it's a monster he can never hope to defeat, let alone even meet. For that to happen, he'll have to be at least on the 7th basement floor. With his scrumptious meal done, our boy drinks some water before doing some light post-meal stretching. With the official business out of the way, it's time to head to basement level 2, room 1, space 3. Before that, however, a quick shower is in order. In L.A.G, taking a shower is like going in and out of a washing machine. The whole process is swift and automatic. As he dumps this random lore on us, Jeong Hyeok reaches for the door handle. To his shock, the knob starts moving on its own. He isn't alone here. Acting quickly, he immediately hides behind the door, trying to make himself as inconspicuous as possible. As he watches the door slowly inch open, he curses his luck. He can't even enjoy a shower in peace. With his weapons dual-wielded, he enters a striking pose, ready for action. Out of the door comes a shadowy silhouette, which quickly reveals itself to be a mommy. Elegant in her stride and obviously dangerous by the looks of it. Our boy, however, isn't the least bit concerned about the mommy before him. His thoughts are racing, calculating the odds of their encounter. Every time players enter a new room, a system message appears. But only one message is displayed unless multiple players enter at the same time. The message is also very clear, either through a pop-up window or through a sound in his mind. That being the case, the only explanation for her being there so stealthily is that she arrived in the room before him. I love how the MC is a Sherlock in such things. But is he really going to ignore that view? The mystery mommy turns out to be Emma Garcia, a player with the public attribute to use 2 active skills at the same time. Currently, her highest skill level is 2. Emma, the Latina mommy, unaware of the stalking MC, stretches lightly. She had been worried about the shower mechanics because they didn't produce water, but the bath turned out more refreshing than she thought. Left uncertain about her future path, she ponders what to do. Her thoughts, however, are interrupted by a cold metal placed against her neck, greatly shocking her. With a cold tone, Jeong Hyeok instructs her to stay still. If she moves, she'll die. He issues further instructions, telling her to raise her hands high where he can see them. Any foolish attempts to make noise or resist will be met with a swift and brutal bash to the head or a hole through the neck. Emma, a bit flustered by how fast things are progressing, tells him to hold up. They can always talk it out. Jeong Hyeok, however, doesn't relent. He instructs her to take out her equipment and souls. She is to slowly kneel and put everything she has on the ground. Garcia, scared shitless, immediately complies, placing her dagger and pouch on the floor. Although he's aware she has none left, Jeong Hyeok still asks her to take out her souls as well. Garcia replies that she has no souls. Surely he should know that as well. Her words hold true. In L.A.G, it's impossible to know the exact number of souls a player holds, but it is possible to determine if they have souls on them or not. Gazing warily around the room, our boy inquires if there are others around, probably her companions. Emma immediately replies that she's alone. The MC, however, isn't convinced. He tells her to stop with the lies. If she already knows that he can check if someone has a soul or not, then she should know he already sensed something. There's someone else with her. Garcia, despite the tense atmosphere, shows a smile, probably thinking about the best way to explain herself. Jeong Hyeok, noticing the odd reaction, asks if she thinks this is a laughing matter. Is the situation funny to her? Emma immediately denies this. Thinking quickly, our boy concludes that the only place left to check would be the shower room she just came out of. With Emma as a hostage, he instructs her to open the shower door. When they enter the room, however, it's completely empty. Jeong Hyeok, a bit puzzled, tells Emma to speak the truth. What the hell is really going on here? Emma nervously replies that the person she was with had already left, gone to the next room, room B222. She further clarifies that after they finished their mission in room B221, 2 doors appeared. The stranger went to room B222, while she came to room B212. This news greatly shocks Jeong Hyeok. The system of L.A.G had changed. Normally, if he'd gone through room B211 and she went through room B221, they shouldn't have met. The only way to meet would be if they both went to the next basement floor. But now it's different. She went from room B221 and came directly to room B212. For you Chads who are a little confused, it basically means that although they were on the same floor, they were in two different rooms. In the normal setting of L.A.G, they shouldn't have met unless they both went down to the next floor. But now, she left her room and joined him in his room, which should have been impossible according to his multiple regressions. With his pickaxe held threateningly against her scalp, Jeong Hyeok asks if she's sure. Latina Mommy immediately confirms, saying she's double sure. Although the change is bizarre, our boy remarks that it's a good one for him. Normally, you're forced to choose a single room on each floor, but now that is no longer the case. So long as he remembers which rooms have the juicy rewards, he can freely choose any room on any floor. Diving back to business, he asks Emma why she didn't go with her companion. Scared and visibly shaking, Latina Mommy answers that the dude was a serious pervert. She didn't want to travel with him. As soon as he chose a room, she immediately escaped to the opposite one. Our boy, with a serious face, decides to think hard about his choice. Should he kill her or not? Currently, the only benefit to killing her would be to get a single soul, which is not really worth it. Latina Mommy, apart from being busty, has a pretty decent understanding of the survival game. Meeting such a person is very rare on the second basement floor. Another juicy incentive is that she can use 2 active skills, which is pretty OP. Our boy, lost in his murderous thoughts, is interrupted by Garcia, who's grown uneasy from the sudden silence. She directly asks if he plans to kill her, expressing her reluctance to fight him. She goes further to plead her case, saying that she has no intention to harm anyone, and, if that still isn't enough for him to keep her alive, he should know she's also smart, athletic, cute, and, of course, sexy. She has sexiness galore. I know it might sound like I made that up, but she actually said that. Our boy, tired of her embarrassing ramblings, tells her to shut up. With a calm voice, he tells her to travel together with him. Although he might sound cool on the outside, inwardly, our boy is thinking that if he is to end her, he should do it later, as it will be more profitable. Damn, it's sad. But currently, Emma Mommy is just a sheep being fattened by our boy to be slaughtered later. The Latina Mommy, unaware of her bleak future, asks Jeong Hyeok if she could turn around. Our boy agrees to this, reminding her to pick up the equipment she'd discarded. Emma Mommy, like a true simp, blushes at the sight of Jeong Hyeok. She had thought he was a middle-aged man from the sound of his voice, but it turns out he's a dripped-out, handsome Chad instead. Everything about him screams poppy, except for his eyes. He has the eyes of a lousy person. Jeong Hyeok, a bit taken aback by the compliment sandwich, asks if she can afford to say that. He had her hostage not too long ago, after all. Emma casually replies that she's a positive person. All that is in the past. Besides, he already decided to travel together with her, so he shouldn't change his mind. Jeong Hyeok, in a roundabout apology, explains that his behavior was necessary. It was a means to protect himself. In this treacherous game, it's better to kill than be killed. Emma, picking up on his long and concealed apology, expresses her relief. She officially doesn't think of him as a bad person, nor as a thirsty pervert. Hearing such straightforward and somewhat naive thinking, our boy reflects that she probably hasn't been forced to kill someone, or maybe hasn't seen someone die before her eyes. She might know the fear of death, but she still isn't realistic about it yet. In that cursed game, they are forced to be close to death. The only difference is the form of the death, whether it's theirs or someone else's. Turning to our boy, Emma Mommy inquires about what their next move will be. Jeong Hyeok replies that they will be challenging the next room, basement level 2, room 1, space 3. Emma asks if there will be monsters in there, and our boy swiftly confirms it. Garcia Mommy, surprisingly resolute, immediately heads for the door, urging Jeong Hyeok to follow. Her false confidence, however, immediately crumbles, and she's left frozen before the door. Turning to our boy, she begs him to go first. She's a vulnerable woman after all. Our boy, however, isn't a simp. As a proud member of the Virginity is Cool Club, he tells her to go in first. Besides, he's a serious gentleman and believes in ladies first. Manners make a man. Garcia mocks him, telling him that he must have learned it wrong. He should probably go learn it again. Saying so, she opens the door. Behind it is a dark and eerie corridor. Our boy, remembering his manners, immediately pushes her inside. A lady should always go first, even if it's into a dark and ominous room. We cut to our Chad and Mommy traversing the dark and ominous corridor. The eerie atmosphere is further emphasized by the silence in the room, their subtle footsteps being the only sound echoing. The soul-saving grace in the otherwise dreadful situation is that Garcia Mommy turns out to be more busty than we initially thought. Just look at that figure. I mean, if you're going to die anyway, you might as well do it in the company of someone busty. No offense to our flat queens. I'd nibble on you any day of the week. Our boy, oblivious to the dynamite Garcia is parking, casually dives into his thoughts, desperately trying to recall the challenge of the next room from his multiple regressions. Garcia calls out to him, interrupting his thoughts. She complains about the room being too dark to see anything. In such a situation, what should they do? Our boy, always a man of manners, ruthlessly pushes her into the room. What's there to be confused about? Just enter the damned room. Garcia moans, startled by Jeong Hyeok's thuggish behavior. It's not the kind of moan we expected, but hey, it's something. The system notification soon sounds, announcing that players Lee Jeong Hyeok and Emma Garcia have entered basement level 2, room 1, space 3. Upon the system's announcement, the lights finally turn on, and the sight before them is revealed. Two Chads down on their luck have checked out of the death game. Shocked by the dreadful sight, Emma screams. Our boy, however, is as nonchalant as ever. His multiple regressions have rendered him numb to such things. This is lag. Death is almost inevitable in this hell. The camera zooms out, and we finally get a glimpse of the entire room. It is mostly empty, with nothing of note except for the hanging contraptions and seats, their purpose apparent. Calmly gazing around the room, Jeong Hyeok notes that there are two bodies this time. He doesn't delve too deep into it, but it's obvious he's familiar with the shit going on in that room. Garcia Mommy, the only oblivious one of the two, tries to make sense of the situation. They're in a room with hanging bodies, and on the wall are multiple screens, their content obscured for now. Leaning closer, she gazes intently at the monitors, trying to discern what they are showing. Jeong the Chad calmly answers her question, saying the screens show where they should head to. Their final destination seems to be a maze from the looks of it. Garcia, the Latina mommy, noting an odd movement in one of the screens, points it out, urging our boy to focus. There was a man shown in it. As the scene zooms in on the man, we can tell he's having a hell of a day. Garcia, noticing the random NPC's expression, comments that he seems to be surprised by something. She turns to Jeong Hyeok, asking what might possibly be hidden there. Our boy, however, shushes her. He's too focused on the man to pay attention to her words, or her bust. Don't worry, mommy. I can do both. The scene zooms in on the random extra fleeing for his life. In typical bot fashion, he trips on himself and falls. Garcia notes that his leg is injured. Should they go help him? Jeong Hyeok, however, turns down her foolish suggestion. Why should they go help him? Rushing in thoughtlessly would only get them killed. Besides, the man is clearly a paid actor. Doesn't she know in a horror film one person has to run and trip on themselves? It's an obvious development. As they continue to stare intently at the screen, the cursed game throws them a curveball. On the screen, a majestic yet deadly predator emerges, calmly stalking its prey. This behemoth is the masked lion, a being capable of eating anything well. Really? Anything? Ahem. Get your dirty minds out of the gutter. Currently, its highest skill level is 5. As the literal cameras for the death game zoom in on the dreadful creature, our busty mommy, Garcia, startles in surprise. What the fuck kind of creature is that? Jeong Hyeok, the experienced regressor, isn't faring too great either. With a panicked expression and butt cheeks clenched, he wonders why a masked lion would be on the second basement floor. Lag had changed, and as it turned out, it hadn't changed only for the better. He cursed himself for being too complacent in his common sense. Of course the death game wouldn't be kind to him. It had changed as a whole, for better or worse. The random NPC, who turns out to be a genuine person and not a paid actor, was currently shitting himself. The lion had him in its sights. Like a spoiled child playing with a toy, it mauled him ruthlessly, his blood painting the ground crimson. Even as he screamed desperately, the giant behemoth was unrelenting, determined to swallow him whole. It even bit his crown jewels for good measure. Damn, just what did he do to make the lion that mad? Despite his pathetic screams and mauled body, the NPC wasn't going down without a fight. Activating his skill, Ice Spear Level 1, he conjured a freezing spear of ice in his palm. Wasting no time, he stabbed it into the dreadful foe. Jeong Hyeok, watching all this from the control room, sighed. It was useless. At that level, the skill couldn't do much to the lion. And true to his thoughts, the freezing spear just bounced off the lion's hide, doing 0 damage. Eventually, however, the NPC decided on a more strategic approach. He stabbed the lion through the only soft spot available, the eye. The lion, left reeling from the attack, wailed in agony. Contrary to the bot's expectations, it didn't release him. Instead, it doubled down on the damage, digging deep into his flesh. And I'm not kidding this time, his balls. In a brutal show of rage, the lion feasted on the NPC, completely ignoring his death throes. The man helplessly coughed up a mouthful of blood, his death seemingly inevitable. Under a bloody shower, the random dude finally succumbed to his fatal injuries, moving on to the afterlife squeaky clean. GG to our boy. Back at the control center, Jeong Hyeok and Emma Mommy watched the scene unfold in shock and horror. Despite the corpses chilling in the background, the duo were glued to the screen, unable to take their eyes from it. Our boy, vexed by his horrible luck, cursed. Throughout his countless regressions, there had been a monster in the maze, but never a masked lion. The situation was proving impossible. A complicated maze, an unkillable mob, there just wasn't a way through it. Fighting the lion was suicidal with zero chances of winning. The best, and maybe only solution, would be to somehow get to the next floor without meeting it. But that was easier said than done. And with his luck, it would be a miracle if it happened. Calming himself down, he steadied his resolve. He wasn't going to give up, not just yet. This regression was a great opportunity, one he couldn't afford to miss. With a firm will, he resolved to survive. He'd survive no matter what. Latina Mommy, with her own MC power-up moment, thoughtfully analyzed the situation. Our boy noted that although she was scared shitless, she didn't turn her eyes from the screen. She was desperately trying to gather as much information as possible, possibly formulating her own plan. As expected of someone with good survival skills, a lethal combination, bust and brains. Jeong Hyeok, turning to the door, urged Garcia to come along. It was time to go. Emma, visibly worried, asked if they'd encountered the dreadful lion in the maze. The MC casually replied, "Maybe." Still worried, Garcia told him to hold the fuck up. Even knowing that, he'd still go in. Our boy, as nonchalant as ever, asked her in return, "What do you plan on doing instead? Stay in this room forever?" It must be obvious to her by now. As soon as you enter a room, there's no going back. You either move forward or die. If she didn't like it, then she could always choose the third option. Go hang out with the boys. Turns out, that was why this room was created, for the players to, hang around. Damn. Turning to the scared but still busty mommy, Jeong Hyeok informed her that they only had two options. They could either go into the maze, despite all they'd seen, or they could stay and do the same as the Chads. Garcia, obviously conflicted, gazed somberly at the Chads. This was a tough decision to make. Our boy, the anti-simp, ruthlessly urged her to go ahead and do it if she wanted to. He wasn't going to stop her. Garcia rebuffed, sarcastically telling him his words were so beautiful. Obviously, our boy is an honored member of the Virginity is Cool Club. Of course he'd speak beautifully to a lady in such situations. Cursing her shitty luck, Garcia drew her sword. This whole place was crazy. The game was crazy. She was crazy. And the guy she thought was a chatty poppy was also crazy. Why did she have to be trapped in such a place? Jeong Hyeok, uncaring of her ramblings, told her to make up her mind. That was the nature of the hell they were in. If she hesitated, she'd die. If she didn't reduce unnecessary behavior, she'd die. She had to be as quiet as possible, or, guess what? Yep, she'd die. Saying so, he firmly gripped the doorknob, poised to enter. Before doing so, however, there were certain things he had to confirm first. Turning to the scared mommy, he asked what skills she had and how many there were. Garcia replied that she had 3. We finally get to see Latina Mommy's skills. She currently has Heist Level 1, which increases her movement speed, Magic Missile Level 1, which fires a sphere that deals physical damage, and Mark Level 1, which leaves a mark on a target. Jeong Hyeok, skeptical, asked if she only had 3 skills. Emma, a bit vexed, replied that not trusting people was a bad habit. Jeong Hyeok, not buying her bullshit, thought to himself, maybe her private attributes are related to her active skills. A side note, if a public attribute is positive, the private attributes will be negative, and vice versa. Taking a moment to plan, he lamented that it was a shame. If her heist had been level 2, they could have made some moves. But as it stood, it was too much to deal directly with the masked lion. However, her active skill mark could indeed come in handy if used properly. It's regrettable that the busty mommy only has 3 active skills. But hey, he's not in a position to talk, since he only has 2 active skills. Garcia called out to him, willing to disclose her passive skills. Jeong Hyeok, however, stopped her. They wouldn't come in handy in the current situation. The only useful traits are the active ones. Garcia asked about his skills as well, and our boy immediately answered, stating his 2 active skills, light and flame. Inwardly, he reflected on not needing too much information. It would just make him dizzy. What was important was giving as much information as he could to gain Emma's trust and lower her doubt. Nothing else mattered at the moment. Turning towards the doomed door, he decided to head in. It didn't matter to him if Emma died before he collected her soul. Even though she was just a sheep being fattened, it was still better in his books if the lion got her instead of him. An added bonus was that if that happened, he could use her as a meat shield and escape. This mission was definitely going to be bloody and challenging for him as well. He didn't have enough active skills, and the advantage of having multiple passive skills would only show later in the future. So for now, he's cooked. On the bright side, however, active skills really shine in the beginning, so there's that. Another thing of note is that he has to be careful not to spam his skills, as it would take a huge toll on his body. But it was better to do so than die pathetically. Even if his heart gave out in exhaustion, he was still determined to live. There was no right choice for him here, not in this hell. The only choice he had was restricted to the current situation he was in. It was up to him to find an answer in the chaos. The death game was changing. It was no longer the place he knew. It had morphed into a hell that was hard to predict. What would happen in the future? He didn't know, but he couldn't run away. The only choice forward was to risk his life and proceed onward. Reaffirming his resolve, he resolutely entered the door, and the true horror of the maze finally revealed itself to them. The system notification soon follows. The public mission for the door is to get out of the maze, the main and only goal being to reach basement level 3. The condition for successfully passing the trial is to contribute 10% or more. If they manage to accomplish that, they'll be rewarded with equipment related to the masked lion and, of course, 3 souls. That was the public mission. The room also had another surprise for them: private missions for each participant. For our boy, the private mission was not to kill. The goal was not to kill people or monsters. If he accomplished that, he'd be rewarded with 4 souls and a random skill. In typical L.A.G fashion, the skill level would be random too. Jeong Hyeok gazes contemplatively at the system notification. Under the current circumstances, he's actually quite glad to receive that private mission. Fighting the masked lion was never an option for him. I mean, he did see the paid actor get his shit rocked, so that's obvious. Anyway, Garcia seems to be lucky. At least she won't die by his hands in this trial. It's truly a shame he can't even do the gentlemanly thing and use her as bait. The system was very ambiguous in its definition of not kill, so leaving her to die when he could have saved her would probably be punished. All in all, it's not a bad start to the nasty trial. The main problem, however, was the private mission she received from the system. If it directly opposed his, then it'll be annoying. Garcia, the Latina mommy, picking up on his stare, turns to him. What was up with the intense gaze? Was she that pretty? Well, mommy, normally I'd answer yes. But the artist really rocked your shit in this panel, so I'll go with possibly cute. Our boy, the anti-simp, casually tells her to knock it off. Turning away, he wonders if she's vigilant for noticing his gaze or just immature based on her actions. All in all, it seems he doesn't have to worry about her. We finally get to see the maze up close. It's not much, but it sure is daunting. Garcia, with some big brain moment, suggests they climb the wall to see what's on the other side. Our boy ignores her foolish suggestion. Emma, not giving up on her big brain moment, points out the electric current-like thing flowing atop the wall. Should they go check it out? Really, bitch? We cut to them standing before the maze door. Like most things in the game, they are given a choice, albeit both equally daunting. The MC laments on the maze changing every time he regresses. As such, his past knowledge is practically useless here. He's feeling a tension he hasn't felt in a long time. There's the obvious instinct and resolve to survive. But mixed in is the anxiety that this might actually be his last regression. The two emotions are blended, constantly plaguing his mind and dulling his senses. Our boy, however, chooses to put all that aside for now. It's not like anything will change if he stresses about it. Besides, there have been many times when he wished his death would be permanent in the cursed game, so dying isn't really a problem. Latina mommy pulls him from his thoughts, asking which path they should choose. Jeong Hyeok, like a true man of culture, uses the best and arguably only method to decide. Hawk 2, spit on that thing. Guided by the sloppy, he confidently points left. Emma, startled by the odd behavior, shouts at him, asking what he's doing. Our boy casually replies that it's a common thing back where he's from. Obviously, Emma doesn't buy this, but we don't blame her. She clearly gets no bitches. Getting serious, the MC reminds her to be silent. They are entering the maze. It'll be dangerous if she continues yelling like that. We cut to them inside the maze. The death trap is exactly as you'd expect. Long, dark corridors flooded with unnerving silence. In a sick twist, there are actually numerous braziers lined up against the walls. However, as expected from the twisted game, all of them are unlit, silently mocking them. Jeong Hyeok reflects that, currently, they lack the means to deal with the masked lion. As such, meeting the fiend in that straight corridor would be their doom. However, even if they had the means, the straight corridor would severely limit their countermeasures. Currently, the only noteworthy equipment in his possession is the speed boots he's wearing. If he gets a heist effect, he might be able to rival the masked lion in speed. Emma, however, would be cooked. There's just no way to stop her from being eaten. Their best bet is to hope they never run into the masked lion. Thinking so, they finally arrive at their first fork in the road. Jeong Hyeok deploys his divine technique, peeping Tom no jutsu. With perfect precision, he cranes his neck, analyzing the road ahead. From his stellar form, it's obvious our boy is an experienced Tom. Turning to Emma, he gives her the go-ahead. The road seems clear. They can proceed. And so they do, walking through the ominous corridor with no end in sight. They soon reach another crossroad, and our boy, experienced in navigating, immediately turns to the mighty Hawk 2 for guidance. Again, the sloppy points them left, and left they go. Emma, visibly shaken, pleads with the MC, asking if he could use another navigation method. Our boy, however, is a Chad. He informs her that the sloppy never lies. If she doesn't like it, then she can decide their next move. And so, in silence, they move, up until their next crossroad. Turning to the doubtful mommy, he asks her which road they should take. Garcia, a bit flustered, finally relents, officially agreeing to consult the mighty sloppy. It points left again. They continue on in this peaceful fashion until, inevitably, L.A.G reminds them why it's a cursed death game. Standing on the blood-soaked ground, Jeong Hyeok dons a somber expression. He feels suffocated, and his blood pressure is high. Why wouldn't it be when such a grotesque scene unfolds before their eyes? Not only did they hit a dead end, but a bloody corpse greets their arrival, almost as if mocking them. The poor fellow must have taken a wrong turn while being chased by the masked lion, ultimately leading to his untimely demise. Emma, visibly shaken, turns to the MC, asking about their next move. She fearfully brings up the possibility of meeting the masked lion but immediately drops the issue. Jeong Hyeok, equally vexed, curses. The death game sure is unforgiving. Emma, playing the role of supportive baddie in the apocalypse, encourages the MC. They should probably try the other forked road. Jeong Hyeok, noting how cool Emma seems to be, finally calms down. He chastises himself for being too nervous about the multiple variables at play. He needs to remain calm. He can't let his emotions be swayed. Just like Emma. She must be terrified, yet she's doing her best to hide it well. He can't lose to her. Turning to the scared mommy, he urges her to go. And so, they turn back, hopeful about the other forked road. As they walk the narrow and gloomy corridor, Jeong Hyeok reflects on how quiet and suffocating it feels. It's even worse because their footsteps are the only sounds echoing in that desolate place. He's been actively trying to avoid the long, straight roads, but the cursed game seems to make passing them a necessity. It's almost as if it's trying to force an encounter with the masked lion. Meeting that fiend, however, is the worst possible outcome for them. The beast doesn't feel pain, so whatever they do, it'll just shrug it off and chew them. Eventually, the inevitable would happen, and at that point, he'd have no choice but to give up on the private mission and use Emma as bait. Damn. I thought Emma had graduated from being a fattened sheep to a certified apocalypse baddie, but it seems I was wrong. We cut to them arriving at a new crossroad. Emma, as nervous as ever, asks for guidance. Maybe the mighty sloppy has some wise choices for them. Our boy, however, tells her to decide. He's not particularly confident in his choice this time, especially the middle road. It gives him a bad feeling. Garcia nervously turns down the offer, opting to let the MC decide. Our boy, a bit puzzled, wonders why she keeps leaving such life-threatening decisions to him. Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. She just wants someone to blame when shit hits the fan. It might be a death game, but mommies will forever remain mommies. He understands her, though. In such a situation, it's human nature to want someone to rely on. And right now, he's that someone. That being the case, he remains resolute. He won't drop his guard. You can never be sure what someone is thinking or what they're hiding inside. He should know better than anyone else, referring to the time he was sent ahead. Done with his inner monologue, the MC continues on his journey. By his side, Garcia is holding her own. It might be a death game, but both are determined to survive somehow. Who knows? Maybe things might actually go well for them. Or so they thought. Their naive hopes are immediately crushed by grim reality. Coming to a stop, a feeling of pure terror grips the duo, their faces slick with sweat and anguish. Who can blame them, though? Before them stands the dreadful behemoth, the creature capable of fucking up their day. The masked lion, as if sensing their presence, turns in their direction, its maw still bloody from its last victim. Surprisingly, there's nothing there. The MC and Garcia have vanished. When we zoom closer, however, we see they're hiding in a corner. A perfect blind spot for the beast. And when we zoom even closer, we see that our boy is secretly copping a feel. Damn. Even in this mess, he's still representing the squad. Truly, not all heroes wear capes. Jeong Hyeok, visibly nervous, tracks the lion, hoping it won't come their way. But his luck is absolute trash. The behemoth's footsteps grow louder, signaling its imminent arrival. Cursing his rotten luck, he desperately scans his surroundings, trying to figure out a way forward. The path back is too far. It's impossible to make the trip unnoticed. Worse, their footsteps would lead the lion straight to them. As it stands, they're cooked. But he can't give up. He can't stop thinking. Even if the odds are slim, he has to try something. Finally, a grim idea dawns on him. The thought is almost laughable, but it's all he has right now. Turning to Garcia, he asks how much she weighs. Garcia stammers that she weighs 55 kilograms. Then, in a moment of clarity, or guilt, she quickly amends it, 60 kilograms. Really, bitch? Even in this situation you're lying about your weight? With a serious tone, Jeong Hyeok tells her to trust him. There's no time to explain. She just needs to follow his instructions. First, she's to cast Heist on him. Then, upon his signal, she's to shoot as many magic missiles as she can. Emma, noting the gravity of the situation, immediately agrees. She casts the Heist skill on Jeong Hyeok, and he immediately notices how light his body feels. Next, it's time to enact their desperate gamble. With their backs facing each other, they ready their attacks. At the MC's signal, they activate their skills, Magic Missile and Flame. Two contrasting abilities swiftly manifest. One majestic, the other subtle. Yet both are equally deadly. The masked lion, still calmly traversing the narrow corridor, is distracted by the sudden magical projectiles zooming past it. The missiles, unbothered by the savage behemoth, stay true to their intended target, the wall. Our boy, holding Emma close, instructs her to focus. They'll use the explosions to mask their movements. Upon impact, they're to immediately jump. Garcia blushes at their body's closeness, but she doesn't let her horniness distract her. She's resolute. She will survive. What follows is an intense game of wits and luck, a desperate gamble that will determine their fates. As the magic missile nears the wall and the masked lion lunges toward them, Jeong Hyeok clears his mind. His sole focus is the impending explosion. So what if he's holding a hot Latina mommy? So what if she's clearly hot and bothered, drunk on his CHADY scent? None of that matters right now. What matters is perfect timing. When the missile lands and the glorious explosion erupts, he's ready to act. With no wasted movement, he scales the wall effortlessly, running up like it's flat ground. Using his trusty pickaxe, he strikes the wall, creating a solid foothold for their hopeful escape. All in record time, too, as the lion catches up, thirsty for blood. But instead of a tasty duo, it's met with a wall of flame, far from the busty Latina mommy it was expecting. Jeong Hyeok takes this moment to explain his big-brain plan. He used the wall of fire for two reasons. First, to keep the lion's gaze down. He didn't want it looking up and noticing them hanging on the wall. Second, the masked lion hates fire. As such, it would be reluctant to approach the flames and, by extension, their hiding spot. The beast is designed to seek and track prey. However, if it doesn't find any, it will eventually leave and continue hunting elsewhere. Our boy nervously tracks the creature, praying his desperate gamble will pay off. So far, so good. The lion hesitates. But then, in that dire moment, the cursed game throws them another curveball. Zooming in on the behemoth, Jeong Hyeok notices something that sends a chill down his spine. If you ignore the majestic chad mane and the dreadful bloody maw, there's one detail that stands out. The beast is perfectly intact. No scars. No scars on its eyes. The same scars the paid actor inflicted before dying a pathetic death. The meaning is clear. There are more lions in the maze. Despite how dire the realization was, it wasn't the end of their horrible luck. Like the Chad Murphy said, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And true to Lord Murphy, the trusted pickaxe, the only buffer between them and the lion's jaws, finally failed them. With subtle cracking sounds, the pickaxe shook, inches away from completely giving way. Cursing his luck, Jeong Hyeok panicked, wondering why the pickaxe would fail at such a time. Did he lack muscle strength? Or had the Latina mommy really lied about her weight? Well, not that it mattered, because even if he forced himself to endure the strain, the wall wasn't going to last long either. Just when he thought things couldn't possibly get worse, they actually did. A piece of rubble from the wall gave way and stealthily fell. And worse still, he was helpless to stop it. Damn. Dude really used up all his luck to have a Latina mommy cling so tightly to him. Before the rubble could reach the ground and seal their pitiful fates, Jeong Hyeok improvised. Using his boots, he expertly intercepted it, skillfully balancing it on the tip of his shoe. This, however, didn't last long, as the stubborn bastard slid off and continued its fall. Watching the cursed rubble, and with no more cards to play, Jeong Hyeok cursed. Damn it. Was it that much of a sin to hold a Latina mommy? Why was he plagued with such horrible luck? In that desperate moment, Emma finally came in clutch. In a show of pure athleticism, she wrapped her legs around our boy and caught the rubble with her free hand. Turning to Jeong Hyeok, she whispered to him, urging him to hold on a bit longer. If he thought his luck was shitty before, just wait till he has to pay for this. The collective curse of all jealous virgins will hit him like a truck. And true to my words, his luck plummeted. The pickaxe was finally giving way. It couldn't hold much longer. Jeong Hyeok noted the dire situation. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. He had to move, and he had to do so now. Whether he liked it or not, they had to fight. Turning to Emma, he signaled her to get ready. Garcia, quick on the uptake, nodded in understanding. Planting his feet firmly against the wall, the MC prepared to leap off, his face showing grim determination. His actions, however, were swiftly thwarted by a strange sound from the maze. Putting a pin on his plan, he listened attentively. He soon identified it as the sound of human footsteps, someone probably being chased by a lion. The poor fellow must have run into the lion they saw in the control room. But that didn't matter to him, because due to the chaos, the masked lion was lured away from them. Thinking quickly, he immediately turned to Emma, instructing her to use her mark skill. The Latina mommy reacted instantly. With the same nimble movements, she clung to our boy, and while still upside down, she activated her skill. Mark. A red projectile shot from her finger, targeting the masked lion. Upon reaching it, it clung to its body. This was the visual manifestation of the active skill. Mark Level 1. It could detect when an object designated as a mark was within a certain distance. Finally free from the harrowing experience, Jeong Hyeok leaped from the wall and performed a superhero landing. Of course, Garcia was still tucked in his arms, so you jealous virgins can suck it. He said GG to the bastard being chased by the masked lion. He might have had a chance to escape one, but now that two lions were probably after him, he was definitely flamed. Turning to Garcia, he urged her to move. They had to escape that place as soon as possible. Garcia immediately followed, activating her heist skill to keep up with him. Catching up to Jeong Hyeok, she asked if they were heading in the right direction. The MC calmly replied that he didn't know and that it didn't matter. What was clear was that they had to immediately leave that place. He instructed her to inform him should she sense the mark placed on the lion. They had to avoid it as much as possible. What followed was their desperate struggle to survive. They went through many forked roads and even met dead ends twice. However, fortunately, Because of the mark placed on the lion, they managed to avoid an encounter with it. For now. Eventually, they found themselves running along a narrow corridor, similar to the numerous ones they'd been through before. Jeong Hyeok, optimistic about their progress, noted that they had advanced quite far into the maze. The end should soon be in sight. If they could continue like that, then surely. However, in typical lag fashion, just when your hopes are raised, the merciless death game crushes them. In that seemingly ordinary fork in the road, one similar to countless ones they'd been through, a nasty surprise was waiting. The MC cursed, lamenting that, of course, lag wouldn't end so quickly. It was a death game after all. Pulling the startled Garcia along, he ran away. It wasn't over yet. They just had to keep moving until the end. Garcia, panting and desperately trying to keep up, called out to him. Jeong Hyeok, however, didn't have time for her at the moment. He chastised her, telling her that if the info wasn't important, she could hold off and tell him later. Emma was resolute. Whatever she had to say had to be said now. That's when she dropped a bombshell. She could sense the marked lion nearby. This info hit our boy like a ton of bricks. Before he could process the info, however, more bad news came. In front of them was another masked lion, chasing its own prey. Jeong Hyeok was taken aback by how fucked the situation suddenly got. 0 to 100, real quick. Despite all the chaos, he still felt something was off. The masked lion chasing the bastards before them didn't have a mark on it, and the one chasing them also didn't have a mark on it. Then where the fuck was the marked lion? The bastards, oblivious to how cooked they were, shouted at our boy, asking for help. The MC ignored them, opting to analyze the situation instead. If his guess was right, then the most likely location of the marked lion would be the next fork in the road. Turning to Garcia, he explained the situation to her. He informed her that they'd most likely run into a lion at the next turn. As expected, the Latina mommy was shocked, but our Chad ignored that. He told her they would bait the lions from the front first. After that, she was to follow his steps as much as possible. Saying so, they finally made the turn, and as expected, the marked lion was there waiting. One of the bastards, unaware of the third beast, found himself in the loving embrace of its toothy mouth, his anguished screams soon sounding. Jeong Hyeok, unbothered by the sight, focused on Garcia. She said she was athletic, right? Well, it was time to prove it. Grabbing her by the arm, he used all his strength to throw her forward, straight towards the lion. Garcia didn't disappoint. In a show of excellent athleticism, she easily parkoured across the lion's body, gently landing in a dodge roll. Turning to the MC, Emma worriedly called out to him. Our boy, showing why he's the MC, parkoured the fuck out of those maze walls, sliding past the lions with ease. He shouted back at Emma, telling her not to stop. The door was finally within sight. And true to his words, the door to the third basement level was just a few meters away. The trio, the MC, Latina mommy, and a random surviving bot, ran for the door like their lives depended on it, because they did. As they got closer, he could finally see it, the cursed iron door that looked solid. The door to hope and possibly despair in that fucking place. The door to escape the current hell they were going through. And the door to head to the next hell they had to face. With a resolute twist, the MC finally opened the door, crashing into the room with a thud. Although they had made it through, it wasn't over. The random extra wasn't as lucky as them. The bastard had his shirt gripped tightly by the masked lion. If things continued like that, he'd be toast. With despair on his face, he looked at the duo for help. Jeong Hyeok, acting quickly, immediately seized Emma's dagger. With an ominous look, he approached the random bot. Although it seemed like he was going to cut him down, he instead slashed his shirt, freeing the lucky guy. Finally, the bastard crashed into the room, safe from the bloody maw of the dreadful tiger. As he walked towards the door, Jeong Hyeok explained that the mobs of the game could never enter through the door. As such, they were no threat. With a screw-you face, he told the lion to fuck off, loudly slamming the door shut. The system notification sounded, announcing that players Lee Jeong Hyeok, Emma Garcia, and finally Dylan O'Brien had entered basement level 3. Upon the system's announcement, the room fell into an unnerving silence. Dylan, gassed out and visibly traumatized by the harrowing experience, collapsed to the floor, panting heavily. Our boy, despite all the shit they'd just gone through, didn't lower his guard. From the looks of it, his paranoia was slowly rubbing off on our innocent mommy. Dylan, oblivious to the tension, turned to them, thanking them for their help. Without them, he would have fallen into the loving embrace of the masked lion, so he sincerely meant it. We get a bit of personal information on the new Chad. His full name is Dylan O'Brien. His public attribute is that any movement-based skill he has gets a buff of 1 level. Currently, his highest skill level is 3. Jeong Hyeok, ignoring Dylan's gratitude, focused more on his character profile. He noted that Dylan had been able to outrun the lion by utilizing his public attribute. He probably used the buff to survive. The curse system sounded again, notifying them of the previous mission's status. It stated that the mission to reach basement level 3 was complete. The rewards would be given to all 3 surviving participants. As for the individual contributions, Dylan surprisingly contributed more than our boy. He had 58%, Jeong Hyeok had 31%, and finally, Garcia Mami had 11%. Although surprising, it turns out that the cursed game is fair in its rewards. While our boy was busy fondling Garcia's plot, Dylan had been hauling cheeks in the maze, escaping from the lions, hence the high score. Turning to Garcia, Jeong Hyeok informed her she'd cut it close. In L.A.G, rewards are only given to those who contribute 10% or more, so Garcia barely survived. Emma, puzzled, asked if it was because of her mark skill. Our boy replied that it was probably because of the stony bastard she'd caught as well. The thirsty system had probably rewarded her for that amazing feat. I would have rewarded her for the amazing view, but that's just me. Soon, another notification sounded, this time for the mission rewards. For successfully completing the mission, they were to choose 1 out of 3 options: a sword, a mask, or a bracelet. Garcia chose the masked lion's bracelet. It increased her muscle strength by 2%. Dylan, with his rock-hard abs, chose the masked lion's sword. It also increased his muscle strength by 2%. Our boy, however, chose the masked lion's mask. It had the active skill, Lion's Cry, level 1. What followed was yet another system notification, this time for the juicy personal mission rewards. It stated that Jeong Hyeok's private mission, Don't Kill People or Monsters, had been successfully completed. As a reward, he'd receive 4 souls, which brought his total to 7. Turns out, not being a gentleman and using Emma as bait really paid off. In addition to the souls, he also received a random skill, and in typical L.A.G fashion, the skill level was random too. The skill acquired was Strong Bones, level 3. It was a passive skill with the effect of making his bones stronger. And I mean all his bones. I would have loved to explain more, but that would be, hard. Obviously, our boy was pleased with the rewards. He remarked that Strong Bones was a useful skill, not only because it was a passive skill, but also because it was already at level 3. Considering all the shit he has to go through to acquire souls to level up, I'd say he's goddamn right. But hey, with challenges come benefits. We wouldn't have gotten the pleasure of seeing Tay Bastard blitz to the afterlife without the challenges, so it's worth it in my books. Smiling deviously, he remarked that he had been drawing a big picture ever since he received the infinite passive ability. And now, with each quest and reward, that picture was slowly becoming reality. He didn't know what private missions Emma and Dylan had. However, it wasn't necessary to spread info about himself to them. In that cursed hell, a situation where they'd have to kill each other might very well arise, and the more they knew about him, the more troublesome it would be. In a real battle to the death, how well you know your enemy, and how much they know about you, really makes a big difference. Done with his thoughts, he finally noticed the odd and awkward silence in the room. Dylan, picking up on it, broke the ice. He apologized to them. He'd been occupied with the system's notification and had suddenly stopped talking. He tried to explain some more, but our Chad and Mommy were giving off some very murdery vibes. The blonde Chad, obviously feeling uncomfortable, appealed to them. They just finished a hell mission. Did they really intend to fight with their lives on the line? Garcia, unsure of the next moves, turned to the MC. What should they do? Our boy, with a calm gaze, told her to put it back in. Put what back in? And where? Anyway, Dylan, reaching out, proposed cooperation. They should continue to help each other survive, just like before. Jeong Hyeok, always a Chad, replied that if he was asking for help again, then he should forget about it. It was already hard keeping himself alive. Dylan, undeterred, replied that he'd up his game the next time. Our boy made it clear that he didn't need his help. All he had to do was not become a Sakura. He didn't need burdens in his squad. Dylan immediately agreed. After all, no one deserves a Sakura in their squad. With the formalities done, it was finally time to proceed. Proceed to the next hell. As they made their way down the seemingly endless flight of stairs, Jeong Hyeok dove into his thoughts. He remarked that the nervousness he was feeling right now wouldn't last forever. He had to hold on to the tension that kept trying to overwhelm him and suppress it. He didn't think Emma and Dylan were vigilant of him. However, he still wouldn't lower his guard. Whether he liked it or not, in that fucked up hell, if you wanted to survive, you'd inevitably have to kill people. And when that hammer finally dropped, most people would choose to kill rather than die. We cut to them arriving on the third basement floor. This time, L.A.G gave them 3 choices. Basement level 3, room 1, space 1. B3 room 2. And finally, B3 room 3, space 1. The experienced regressor noted a difference from his past regressions. Up until this point, there had always been 2 doors on the third basement floor. It wasn't that surprising that such a change had happened, especially after all the shit show he'd been through. However, what worried him was the middle room, room 2. Before he could explain why it made his balls itch, Dylan interrupted him. He called out, saying that if they chose the second room, they'd head straight to the 4th basement floor. Garcia, finally getting some dialogue time, agreed with him. She noted that the longer the room number, the more space it occupied on the floor. What she basically meant was that the more space it occupied, the more trials you'd have to complete to move on to the next basement floor. Jeong Hyeok, the CHADY regressor, agreed with them. However, L.A.G wasn't that simple. When a floor had only 1 room, it was difficult to imagine the kind of shit show that was inside. As much as it was great to head to the next floor, it was equally important to build up your strength by going down step by step. Moreover, it was the first time he was seeing a single space on the third basement floor. If they weren't careful, then they'd probably join Taemin in hell, getting hella backshots. All in all, something was definitely fishy. The reward might be great, but the risk just wasn't worth it. More importantly, he was already familiar with the strategy for conquering B311. Knowing the strategy meant he could easily handle any variables that might arise. With that, his mind was made up. Dylan, thinking he was the MC of the manhwa, confidently pointed to room 2. Reality, however, humbled him real quick. Jeong Hyeok chose B311, and as expected, the hot and bothered Latina mommy followed him. Dylan, realizing he was alone and without bitches, immediately relented. If everyone was going to B311, then he should probably follow. Jeong Hyeok mockingly replied, telling him it was his choice. Dylan, flashing a charming smile, replied that he wasn't a jerk. On the contrary, he was surprisingly strong-minded. He definitely wouldn't complain about it later. With the formalities done, it was time to make some moves. The MC, with a Sigma Riz, donned his lion's mask, immediately activating the active skill, Fear. Garcia, feeling the effect of the mask, moaned. Again, it wasn't the kind we expected, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. I'm just glad you down bad chads are at least getting some action. Noticing the potent effect of the mask, Jeong Hyeok unequipped it, opting to use it only when he needed its skills. Turning to the duo, he urged them to make any preparations they needed before they headed in. The duo immediately agreed. What followed was a quick level-up montage. Using 2 souls, he leveled up his barehanded fighting skill to level 3. He also upgraded breathing from level 1 to 3, and finally muscle from level 1 to 2, consuming 6 souls in total. He had decided to only invest in his passive skills. With that, his total souls dropped to 1, specifically kept for emergencies in the future. Finally, with all preparations done, the trio resolutely headed into the next room, the door closing ominously behind them. There was no turning back now. The system notification sounded, announcing that players Lee Jeong Hyeok, Latina Mommy Garcia, and Dylan the Abs O'Brien had entered B311. Upon their arrival in the next room, the trio was shocked. Unlike every room until now, basement level 3 was packed. There were friendly and unfriendly faces everywhere, each eyeing them with caution and vigilance. The trio, experienced in the hell that is L.A.G, immediately entered a battle formation, ready to respond to any suspicious moves. Jeong Hyeok, with his usual murdery thoughts, noted that with his current skills and equipment, he'd probably be able to take down 5 people. However, he'd most likely die too. The enemy outnumbered them way too much, and his skills alone were limited. Their only chance of survival hinged on Garcia and Dylan's power. In that tense moment, the enemy finally made a move. However, it was an unexpected one. Instead of attacking, their likely leader approached them alone and unarmed. In a gentle tone, he told them to relax. He didn't mean any harm. The gentle giant in Giga Chad turned out to be Dwayne "The Rock" Smith. His public attribute was that he'd get a 10% buff on equipment that increased muscle strength. Currently, his highest skill level was 3. Jeong Hyeok visibly paled at the cheat-like ability. Apparently, a 10% buff was outrageous, especially since the buff would only accumulate the further down they went. To give more info on this point, skills attached to equipment cannot be leveled up with souls. In addition, their power varies depending on the wielder's physical ability. In Dwayne's case, he'd have a buff of 10% on every piece of equipment that increases muscle strength, and that buff stacks. So you can imagine how broken the attribute is. Dwayne, with a gentle voice, called out, telling them they didn't need to be so vigilant. He nor his group had any intentions of fighting them. Of course, he understood the need to be wary in the cursed game. However, as things stood, they would definitely have a better chance of survival if they joined forces. Jeong Hyeok analyzed the situation. At that distance, there was plenty of time for the bastards at the back to prepare a surprise attack. Fighting wasn't a good decision. With that thought in mind, he calmly walked forward, ignoring Emma and Dylan's shouts for him to stop. Stepping before the gentle giant, our boy calmly eyed him. He noted his extreme size and height. Only a giant poppy like that would be capable of leading the group behind him. Shaking Dwayne's hand, he expressed his intentions to cooperate, and the latter agreed to it. Names weren't necessary as the system revealed everything anyway. We learned that the group had run into each other on the 3rd basement floor. Of course, they didn't fully trust each other, but survival made cooperation inevitable. Dylan eyed the group suspiciously. He asked if they could trust them. Our boy, like a true Sigma, let him know he didn't trust them either. He had only fondled Garcia a bit. That wasn't enough to guarantee trust. At the very least, Lord Hawk 2 had to be involved for trust to develop. He informed them they didn't have to fight, not only because they lacked the numbers advantage, but also because it'd be better to move together for now. Emma resolutely expressed her stance, saying she believed in our boy. Jeong Hyeok, like a true member of the Virginity is Cool Club, ruthlessly shut her down, telling her not to trust anyone. She'd rather get used to death instead. Emma, however, simped harder, saying he wasn't just anyone. The MC ignored her. He didn't have time to deal with her horniness. We cut to Dwayne giving the group a pep talk, encouraging them to work together. Jeong Hyeok noted that he seemed to be the optimistic type. He further gave us some lore about the death game. Apparently it wasn't a place where missions could be solved just by throwing numbers at them. The cursed game was ruthless. Whatever you did, it'd just counter and fuck you back. However, that didn't mean numbers were useless. In some cases, they could come in handy. An example of this was the next room, B311. Although numbers weren't absolute, they could indeed help. However, if you thought you could pass the mission solo, then you'd be gravely screwed. But even with that said, he was still uncertain if the next room was the same as in his memory, or if the cursed game had thrown him another curveball. Guess he'd just have to wait and see. With his final pep talk done, Dwayne called for the virgins to assemble. It was time to head to the next room. Turning around, he confidently walked toward the door. To his surprise, however, no one followed. First of all, there was no way these bastards were virgins. Just look at this emo chick, she clearly gets bitches. And most importantly, they all had the same expression on their face as if to say, fuck that. This was L.A.G, the cursed death game. It wasn't a joke. Did he really think they'd follow just because he wanted them to? Even the bustiest Latina mommy wouldn't be enough for them to move. Jeong Hyeok, gazing from the sidelines, mocked the fool. It seemed he still didn't understand how the dreadful game worked. The reason for their hesitation was quite simple. How could they risk their lives for people they didn't know or trust? Especially in a situation where the worst of humanity came out. Nothing stopped the other participants from prioritizing their own lives, or maybe even stabbing them in the back while doing so. Dwayne the Rocky Chad clearly didn't understand this, so he kept trying to convince the squad. But as expected, nobody moved. Jeong Hyeok, noting the hopeless situation, called out to the only dependable person in the group, Emma Mommy. He informed her of his intentions to leave. Would she come along? Garcia, like the down bad Stacy we know, immediately agreed. How could she let her poppy go alone? Turning to the Abs O'Brien, the MC asked what his intentions were. Dylan replied that Jeong Hyeok seemed more trustworthy than the sketchy folks assembled there. He might as well go with him. Besides, he owed our boy a debt, and like the Lannisters, he always paid his debts. With the mini-meeting done, Jeong Hyeok, always a man of action, decided to act immediately. He knew there was no need to reason with people who were scared shitless from being trapped in that hell game. The best way to reach out to them was through actions. As such, He calmly walked past the arguing bots and headed straight for the door. With his hands firmly on the knob, he prepared to enter. The random bots, noting the odd change, immediately called out, ordering him to stop. Who the hell did he think he was to just casually enter without discussing it with them? First of all, the nerve of these motherfuckers. And second of all, he's the freaking protagonist, and he's got all the bitches. If he can't enter the room, then who the hell can? As expected, our boy ignored their useless shouts. He simply called out to his squad, telling Mommy and Abs O'Brien to hurry up. Addressing the gentle giant, he asked if he would be coming along. Upon Dwayne's hesitation, our boy, always a man of manners, told him to hurry the hell up and decide. He didn't have time to beg giant chads like himself. If he was a mommy, then maybe. But there's no way he's begging a chad. He chastised him, saying that if the squad wasn't united, it'd be better to just go solo. Didn't he know that much? All in all, he didn't need people who weren't ready. They'd just be a bunch of Sakuras. Dwayne grew silent at the harsh truth, seemingly thinking about Jeong Hyeok's words. The MC, noticing his persistent hesitation, immediately turned to leave. He could stay if he didn't want to. The gentle giant, finally coming to a decision, shouted at Jeong Hyeok to wait. He'd join him. As expected, the rest of the bots were shocked. They never expected Dwayne to leave them behind. Especially this emo chick. Her expression was divine. Sure, she got bitches, but what's the use of bitches if you're in a death game? Doing a full 180, they all shouted at our boy, begging to join him. Jeong Hyeok gazed at the bots with scorn. He remarked that their reaction was expected. When other people start to move, they'd obviously be forced to move as well, since nobody wants to be left alone. Flashing his yandere vibe, he informed the people that he wouldn't be moving with all of them. Their huge numbers might cause a complication later on. As expected, the bots visibly shook, desperately scrambling to be taken along. It wasn't surprising though, as in the cursed game, most of the participants were just your average normies dragged into the hell game. Behind the betrayal and backstabbing, they were just your average folks trying to survive. Of course, there were exceptions to this, and one example was the Chad Dwayne. This hunk of a unit was definitely built different, and the MC really wanted him in his squad. All in all, it wasn't up to him to decide, it was all up to Dwayne. He hoped the Chad wouldn't be swayed by the useless words of others, as such people tend to die quickly in lag. Turning around, he resolutely pushed the door open. If Dwayne wanted to stop the bots from following, he could. Hell, he could even let them all in. He could do whatever he wanted, just don't disturb him. With that, he immediately entered the next room, and as expected, all the bots followed. The system notification soon sounded, announcing that player Lee Jeong Hyeok had entered room B311. The same notification sounded for every participant that entered the room. But who has time to acknowledge such bots? So let's skip it. The next room, like all the rooms before, was gloomy and dreadful. Although it was mostly empty except for the red crystal in the middle. For all those familiar with the cursed game, looks can truly be deceiving. Before the participants was a clear line painted on the floor, probably marking the start of the trial. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but if this trial is like the red light, green light game from Squid Game, then these motherfuckers are cooked. The system notification sounded again, explaining the details of the trial. The objective was simple: survive and escape B311. If they did so, they would be rewarded with 2 souls and a random level 2 passive skill. Jeong Hyeok, salivating at the possible reward, noted that if the skill turned out to be useful, he'd be golden. His thoughts, however, were interrupted by the bots' useless chatter. It seemed they didn't have a juicy narrator like myself to inform them of the room's contents, so they were just calling shit out. They noted the line on the ground, the ominous crystal in the middle of the room, and finally the doors at the back of the room. Jeong Hyeok, smiling to himself, remarked that fortunately the room stayed the same as in his memories. He already knew everything about the room, including the dreadful guy that would show up. The system sounded again, announcing the start of the game. It was a snowball fight. Upon the sound of the start signal, they could begin moving. A random bot, in typical bot fashion, ignored the system's announcement and stepped forward. The fool, noticing everyone's shocked faces, shot them a puzzled look as if he didn't know what he did wrong. Really, bitch? You really don't know? The system noted his false start and, as punishment, Rent was released. It then issued a second notification, reminding the poor bastard to wash his neck for death. Jeong Hyeok, calmly observing the situation, remarked that there were always such fools in the game. Dwayne chimed in, shocked by the guy's obvious foolishness. Wasn't it common sense not to cross a line when it was so obviously painted on the ground? The MC noted that because of the bastard, the dreadful guy would come out early. Well, he was always going to come out, so it wasn't a big deal. Turning to the squad, he warned them not to take their eyes off the red crystal. No matter what happened, they had to remember this. The other bots, holding their own meeting, noted how close the doors were. If they just had to leave before something came, then they should have enough time, right? Deciding to act on that foolishness, they immediately made a run for it, desperately aiming for the door. In a shocking twist, Dylan joined them, apologizing for leaving early. What the hell, man? What happened to the Lannisters and always keeping their promises? Garcia, noting the obvious betrayal, cursed Dylan. The MC, however, was chill about it. He calmly reminded the group not to move. The start signal hadn't sounded yet. In typical lag fashion, just when you thought you'd gotten away with something, the hell game comes knocking. The red crystal, as if in response to the numerous violations of game rules, started shaking. With a crimson aura radiating, the red crystal cracked, kicking up a windstorm. This change obviously attracted the participants' attention, but it was already too late. With a final hum, the crystal shattered, sending its pieces flying everywhere. Like shrapnel from a dirty bomb, the pieces zeroed in on the participants, blitzing the shit out of them. In a symphony of carnage, the ominous red pieces landed, leaving the bots desperately scrambling to survive. The CHAD trio wasn't safe from the fallout either. Some of the crystals flew their way, forcing Garcia to duck for cover. However, even this wasn't enough, as one red bastard targeted her gorgeous face, poised to wreck it. In that desperate moment, Jeong Hyeok came in clutch, shattering the crystal with his bare hands. Not gonna lie, that was hella cool. I'm sure Garcia mommy is moist right now. The MC, oblivious to my down bad thoughts, noted that because of his passive skills, hard skin and strong bones, his hands didn't get hurt. The blow felt more like a tickle to him. Emma, thankful for the save, called out to him. Our boy, however, cut her off. Now wasn't the time for that. She should focus on the situation. No matter what, she shouldn't look away. As the dust finally settled, we got a glimpse of the devastating aftermath of the carnage. Corpses lay mangled and bloody on the ground. Some bastards, ignoring the grotesque scene, hurriedly scrambled to collect the souls of the fallen. Dwayne, enraged by the vile actions, moved forward to act. The MC, however, stopped him. That was the true nature of L.A.G. Whether he liked it or not, the cursed game would always remain the same. Besides, he didn't need to act personally, as the idiot was bound to die anyway. And true to his words, a ghostly silhouette manifested in the settling dust cloud. With yellow eyes straight from a horror film, the ghostly abomination howled, unleashing its harrowing aura upon the participants. I would love to explain exactly what it is, but honestly, what the fuck is this? At some point you just have to say, fuck that, and check out of the game, because this is some bullshit. The system notification sounded, introducing the dreadful foe. The fiend was called Miet. Its attribute was that it had eyes, which honestly makes no sense. Currently, its highest skill level is 6. All in all, the group was fucked. And true to my words, the dreadful fiend stared down at the terrified participants, its long limbs itching to move. Dwayne called out to the MC, asking for answers. Jeong Hyeok, however, ignored him, opting to focus solely on the beast. The other participants were faring much worse, their faces slick with sweat and horror. They didn't know exactly what the fiend was, but it didn't take a genius to tell just how royally screwed they were. Even the treacherous Dylan was freaking out, probably regretting betraying his poppy. One of the bots decided to capitalize on the stillness. Activating his active skill, Haste, he made a run for it, hoping to outpace the fiend. The beast, however, wasn't messing around. It swiftly locked onto him. Crouching down, it immediately launched into the air, kicking up a windstorm. Rising high into the sky, the fiend bore its ghastly claws, lunging straight for the fleeing fool. In a horrifying show of power, it clawed the bastard in two, painting the ground with his entrails and blood. With its prey slain, the beast stomped on his corpse as if challenging the participants to do something about it. In a husky voice, it sealed their fates. One prey down. One bot, as if blind to the obvious situation, lunged at the beast. Kicking off the walls, he swung his pickaxe at the fiend. The abomination easily caught it, finding no challenge in his pitiful resistance. In grotesque retaliation, the fiend grabbed his head, crushing it like a ripe tomato. Despite the gross and sticky brain matter soaking its claws, the beast remained passive, unmoved by the brutality of its actions. The other participants, noting the brutal change, made a run for it. Their only salvation was to hopefully reach the door. But even that was easier said than done. The fiend, done with its second prey, dove back into the hunt, its thirst for blood unquenched. With ridiculous speed, it lunged at the first bastard in its way. The poor fool, helpless and desperate, swung his sword, hoping to high heaven his attack would land. Reality, however, proved to be brutal as the fiend bitch-slapped the sword out of his hand, tearing through the hard steel like it was paper. In a harrowing move, it tore the man's head from his neck, leaving a fountain of crimson blood in its wake. However, even that wasn't enough to satiate its lust for carnage, and so it dove back into the hunt, pursuing the fleeing participants. As the beast clawed and yanked out a participant's entrails, we learn more about the cursed game. The fiend was the penalty for breaking the game rules. If it caught you, then it would attack, no questions asked. Sure, it might seem a bit unfair, and some fools might want to argue, but this was L.A.G. That's just how fucked up the death game was. In most cases, a single moment of carelessness, or maybe just a random dumb decision, could spell your demise. Dwayne, watching the massacre from the sidelines, proposed to help the poor fools. Jeong Hyeok, however, immediately shut down his foolish thoughts. Was he blind? Didn't he see the fiend clearly clapping cheeks on the death floor? If he was that desperate to die, he could go right ahead. Besides, the mission wasn't one that could be solved by simply fighting your way through, nor was the fiend something they were capable of fighting with normal means. All in all, his meaning was clear. Wash your own neck for death. Don't wash ours. In that desperate situation, the only arguably positive thing was that a lone figure had miraculously survived the massacre. And that CHADY figure was Dylan, the treacherous O'Brien. Relying on his active skill, jump, he put a considerable distance between himself and the fiend, his escape imminent. The MC, calmly watching from the sidelines, noted that it was probably the jump skill that allowed the treacherous bastard to survive his encounter with the masked lions. One thing was for sure, though. Despite how OP it seemed, it had a significant drawback on stamina, so it couldn't be spammed. Back on the death floor, Dylan had made considerable progress in his escape. The doors to freedom were so close that he could already smell them. Garcia, also watching, commented on Dylan's successful escape. Our boy, however, thought otherwise. He confidently replied that the bastard was dead. Just like Tae Min, all treacherous bastards had the same inevitable end: death by backshots. Dylan, oblivious to his fate, loudly celebrated. He had made it. With his arms stretched, he reached for the door, ready to escape that death floor. The cursed fiend, however, threw him a curveball. In a Luffy-like move, it gomu no-meed off the walls, swiftly catching up. With a loud thud, it landed right beside the fleeing Dylan, the latter left cursing his luck. Jeong Hyeok somberly watched all of this from the sidelines. Turning to the squad, he instructed them on the rules. Only when the fiend showed its back to them should they close their eyes. Otherwise, they should always keep them open. No matter what, they shouldn't dare close them. Saying so, we finally see the fate of the fleeing traitor. With sputtered blood and a dropping head, the treacherous bastard meets his end. Death by decapitation. The system, as if celebrating the death of the bastard, announced the official start of the game. From that moment, the staring contest game would commence. Jeong Hyeok, always a man of action, moved immediately. He reminded the squad about the rules. In addition, they shouldn't scream or go for the souls or items dropped by the fallen. They shouldn't do anything unnecessary. They should simply and calmly make their way to the door. Turning to Emma, he specifically emphasized his instructions. The Latina mommy, a bit vexed for being singled out, argued that she'd understood the rules. Jeong Hyeok, like the Chad he is, told her to cut the bullshit. She had a tendency of moaning for the slightest reason. She should definitely cut that out. Hell no. Do your thing, baby girl. Let that voice sing. With the basics out of the way, the squad moved. Dwayne, a bit tense, questioned the MC, asking what would happen if they broke the rules. Jeong Hyeok calmly replied that if they did so, the fiend would attack, and their fates would probably be the same as the earlier fools. They were to move forward bearing that in mind. So long as they followed the rules, they'd be fine. For now. We cut to the fiend absolutely violating Dylan's corpse. I know I hate the treacherous bastard, but goddamn. The abomination stomped on his corpse, ripping and shredding his flesh into pieces. Jeong Hyeok, unmoved by the grotesque situation before him, continued his walk. The fiend wasn't looking their way, so it was the best time to reach the door. The other surviving participants, desperate and without any other options, followed the trio, their faces slick with sweat. And so, in that fashion, the group slowly made their way to the door, the tension in the room evident. The fiend, as if sensing their move, turned to them, its harrowing eyes staring down at them. The squad, feeling the pressure from the gaze, immediately stopped, helpless against the beast's whims. Watching the abomination walk toward them, they panicked, their voices laced with worry. The MC, however, calmed them down. He informed them that the fiend would bait them into a staring contest. No matter what, they shouldn't close their eyes or make a sound. If they abided by those rules, the beast wouldn't attack them. And obviously, they shouldn't do anything to aggravate it. But that was obvious. Actually, scratch that. It isn't that obvious after all. There are some dumb motherfuckers in this manhwa. With that, the fiend pounced on its first victims, challenging them to a staring contest. The duo, stunned by dread, looked helplessly at the fiend, cursing their horrible luck. The MC, unbothered by their outcome, urged his group to move. It was a great opportunity, one they couldn't afford to miss. He urged them to move quickly. However, they were to pay attention, not to run. Back to the unlucky participants. The duo was currently shitting themselves, their bodies drenched in sweat. In typical bot fashion, one participant held onto the other, begging to be saved. The man, equally worried about his fate, told the bitch to let go. Did she plan to get them both killed? The fiend, however, wasn't concerned about all that. In its typical brutal fashion, it grabbed the woman's head, her end obvious. Despite the desperate screams and pleas for help, the squad didn't look back. They calmly made their way to the door. Even as the beast chased down the man and ripped him to pieces, the squad didn't stop. Their steps continued. They moved on through the screams, through the anguished moans, and finally through the eerie silence. No matter what happened behind them, the trio didn't stop, their eyes fixed firmly on the doors. With a solemn look, Jeong Hyeok reminded them not to hurry. If they panicked, they'd die. And so, with tense steps, the squad moved forward, drawing closer to the door. Up until a deafening thud sounded behind them, the beast had finally caught up. Ignoring the looming figure, bathed in its victim's blood, the MC instructed them to continue moving. If the beast wasn't in front of them, then they had no reason to meet its gaze. Despite the beast's husky voice baiting them to play with it, the trio kept moving, completely ignoring it. Even as it stalked them, begging for just one game, the trio ignored it, continuing to move. The tense atmosphere made the MC despair. He knew the beast was waiting for any of them to make a mistake. Its ghostly claws were stretched, ready to shred them to pieces. However, even as the hair on the back of their necks stood, the trio didn't make any mistakes. They continued to move, completely ignoring the fiend. The MC activated his passive skill, Pant. It was because of this skill that he could barely keep his calm. The same couldn't be said for the other two. They were definitely faring much worse than him. Grabbing them by the arms, he led the way to B331. Of course, he had no intention to force them. If they had other plans, then they would naturally drift away. But as it stood, that didn't seem to be the case. With bated breath, they slowly made their way to the chosen door. Just 20 more steps, and they'd be done. Just a little bit more, and they'd finally say goodbye to that cursed room. However, in typical lag fashion, just when everything seemed to be working, the death game sent them a curveball. The fiend, as if laughing at their useless attempts, ricocheted off the ceiling, landing before them. In its grating voice, it begged them to play. As expected, the squad panicked, their faces slick with terror. Garcia, probably feeling the worst of it, shook like a leaf, her usual brave facade crumbling. With darting eyes, the fiend stared at the trio, searching for the best partner for its death game. Eventually, it settled on one. Garcia. Damn. With a silent scream, the fiend announced its pick, immediately beginning its game. Despite the horror she was feeling, Garcia held her own, maintaining eye contact with the fiend. She did great, up until she didn't, and a silent moan escaped her lips. Please no, not our mommy. Garcia, with tears in her eyes, turned to Jeong Hyeok. She didn't need to say much. The desperate look on her face was evident. She had broken the one rule he'd warned her about, and now the only person she could rely on was him. Jeong Hyeok, however, didn't move. As bitter as it was, he knew it was all over. It had been over from the moment she made a sound. Nothing could be done about it. And so, when the fiend blitzed Garcia, he stood by, motionless. Even when the demon crushed her head and Garcia desperately begged to be saved, Jeong Hyeok still did nothing. What could he do? He was powerless in the face of the fiend. The best he could do was hold her hand, accompanying her on her journey to the afterlife. A feeling of deep sorrow and resentment overwhelmed him, trying to push him to act, but he knew he couldn't. The bastard fiend still had its eye on him, baiting him to react. If he did, he'd surely die as well. In the past, there had been many times he couldn't control his emotions, and ended up running headfirst into impossible foes. And, as expected, he met his demise in every one of those situations. So, as the bastard fiend viciously brutalized Garcia, ripping her body into literal pieces, Jeong Hyeok stood silent, watching it all unfold like an uninvolved spectator. The fiend, done with its massacre, eyed the duo as if waiting for retaliation. The Chads, however, didn't move, maintaining their passive stance. Not getting the reaction it expected, the fiend threw Garcia's severed head toward them, baiting them to make a move. As expected, the Chad's brave facade cracked, threatening to collapse. In that desperate moment, a new voice sounded, drawing their attention. One of the NPCs had miraculously survived the massacre and was begging to be saved. The fiend, noticing the new plaything, immediately leapt into action, leaving the Chads behind. Where the fuck was this bot when Garcia was being violated? Stupid bot. Can't even do his job right. Back to our slain mommy. Garcia's severed head lay on the ground, her eyes wide open. From the tears in her eyes, it was obvious she still had some lingering regrets. Jeong Hyeok, always a practical man, collected Garcia's soul. Under any other circumstances, he wouldn't have. But Garcia's soul manifested from her head. This was clearly a sign. She'd wanted to give him head one last time. Respecting her wishes, he immediately pocketed the soul, leaving the mommy behind. Dwayne, watching this from the sidelines, eyed our boy. A lot needed to be said, but now wasn't the time. Jeong Hyeok, oblivious to his thoughts, instructed him to collect Dylan's soul. He needed to be fast before the bastard fiend returned. Dwayne, being a man of principle, turned down the offer. Our boy, accustomed to the fucked-up death game, calmly pocketed the soul. This was L.A.G. No matter the situation, resources had to be treasured. Done with his business, he opened the door to the next room. Before he could go in, however, the dreadful fiend returned, eager to continue its cursed game. The MC, unbothered by the looming foe, told Dwayne to head in. The fiend couldn't do anything to them anymore. And so, under Miete's constant pleas begging them to stay and play, our boy moved, his gaze fixed firmly on the next room. With the door shut and the system notification sounding, the dreadful trial of B311 finally ended. Our boy had gained a lot, but he'd also lost a lot. The busty mommy, Garcia. GG to our girl. Back to the Chads. Dwayne, sympathizing with the MC's loss, consoled him. There was nothing he could have done. Jeong Hyeok, still holding on to Emma's hand, wondered if that was truly the case. He hadn't known her for long, and as a regressor, he was more than realistic about death in the cursed game. However, he'd be lying if he said it didn't sting. Me too, bro. It stings like hell. The system notification, unbothered by our mourning, sounded, announcing the mission's status. It stated that the mission was cleared, and players Lee Jeong Hyeok and Dwayne Smith would receive rewards. Dwayne, always a gentle giant, cursed himself. It was unfortunate, but he couldn't stop himself from anticipating the rewards. The MC told him not to worry about it. That was the nature of the death game. Survival always came first. Speaking of rewards, for the first clear reward, the system gave 2 souls. If he added that to the 4 souls he'd collected from Emma and Dylan, plus the one he had saved, his total was back to 7. Not wasting time, he immediately upgraded his passive skills. Tough skin, strong bones, and bare-handed combat to levels 3, 4, and 4, respectively. The second clear reward was a random level 2 passive skill. The system gave him swordsmanship level 2. With the skill, his knowledge of swordsmanship would increase. Jeong Hyeok was delighted by the skill. He remarked that there was no such thing as a useless skill, only a useless person. That being said, it still felt better to get skills that would be immediately useful, like the swordsmanship skill. With the rewards out of the way, the system immediately issued the next mission. The objective was simple. They had to survive and exit the next room, B331. As for the clear conditions, the first was to reduce the number of any living organism by at least 1. The second was to do the same, but to a group of creatures. If they succeeded, they'd be rewarded with 6 souls. Dwayne, a bit vexed by the announcement, complained about not getting time to rest. The MC, more accustomed to how things worked, remarked that lag never stops. The death game starts the moment you open your eyes, and ends the moment death takes you, not a second before. Dwayne, a bit confused, questioned the MC about the clear condition. What did the system mean by any living organism? Jeong Hyeok nonchalantly answered. What did he think? Finally realizing the gravity of the situation, Dwayne exclaimed in shock. The MC, however, ignored him. He had more important things to do. Turning around, he conducted a makeshift funeral for Garcia. With a solemn smile, he noted that she was a good person. If they had continued their journey together, she might have been someone he could have trusted. But alas, they were separated too quickly. He didn't know when the bond between them had deepened, but because of it, he was starting to waver. The feeling of loss was one he'd felt countless times, but it never got easier, no matter how much he experienced it. The only consolation he felt was that Garcia would be resting peacefully and wouldn't have to suffer anymore in the cursed game. Offering a gentle prayer, he wished the Latina mommy eternal, peaceful rest. With that, he turned away, forever severing their fates. Dwayne, noticing his solemn mood, asked if he was okay. He had just lost a companion after all. Jeong Hyeok told him not to worry about it. What was done, was done. Even still, Dwayne found it regrettable. Having to collect a soul in such a situation must have felt like trash. Our boy, as calm as ever, brushed it off. He was used to it by now. Switching topics, Dwayne brought up what was really on his mind. The MC, however, stopped him. He didn't need to say anything. Besides, he had a pretty good idea of what he wanted to say. He didn't need to explain himself or convince him. They just needed to do what they thought was right. If at any point they disagreed, then they could simply part ways. Dwayne, agreeing with his reasoning, offered a handshake. The first one was a greeting, but this time, he was offering it as a sign of trust. Jeong Hyeok, always a Chad, asked the giant if he expected him to trust him because of a handshake. Dwayne replied that the whole basis of a handshake was to prove to each other that you weren't holding a weapon, so it was definitely a sign of trust. Well, I doubt Lord Hawk II, the god of trust, can get involved in this situation, so he'll have to take his word for it. Jeong Hyeok agreed to the sentiment. However, from now on, they shouldn't shake hands. Who knows where Dwayne's hands have been after all. With their business done, the Chads prepared to head out. The gentle giant, showing a more tsundere side, told the MC to hold up. He expressed his reluctance to fight Jeong even if they were the last 2 people left standing. Our boy, always a Chad, immediately turned down his confession. First of all, he was still grieving his best eater, and secondly, words were pointless in that cursed hell. However, he'd gotten the message. So long as Dwayne didn't backstab him, he had no intentions of killing him, especially over some souls. He was pretty sure there wasn't anyone on basement level 3 who'd sucked as many souls as him, so he was pretty much invincible. The only thing he needed to watch out for was special traits or skills that were beyond his expectations. Despite the possible betrayal, he still brought Dwayne along, mostly because he was confident he could kill him anytime he wanted. However, just because he could, doesn't mean he should. Finding someone to trust in L.A.G is very difficult, so he'd like to hold on to Dwayne for now. That being said, it's still too early to judge whether Dwayne is trustworthy or not. After living countless lives, he could still count the number of people he thought he could trust, and some of them even ended up betraying him. So, there's no need to be hasty in his judgment. Matter of fact, now that he thought about it, trust didn't really matter. If someone became a companion, it was only because their goals aligned. He didn't need to trust them to work together. And so, it was better not to trust anyone ever again. Damn. I know bro's grieving, but goddamn. Garcia's death must have really hit him hard. Dwayne, puzzled by the MC, asked why he'd zoned out. Wasn't he going to the next room? Jeong Hyeok replied that he was organizing his thoughts. He was on that loner, emo grind. With his mind clear and their business done, the duo entered B331, the door shutting behind them. What greeted them was a vast snowfield with mountainous peaks scattered all around. Dwayne, shocked by the sudden environmental change, cursed. What kind of bullshit was this? Turning to the MC, he asked what they should do. The MC calmly replied that they should obviously take care of the cold first. If Garcia were still around, they could have borrowed some heat. But alas, Latina Mommy was now in heaven, so that wasn't an option. Locking in, Jeong Hyeok noted that if the clear conditions were the same as his past regressions, then either he or Dwayne would be leaving the room. They couldn't both make it out alive. Right now, however, something needed to be done about the cold. With that in mind, he activated his skill, Light. Apparently, the skill could also be worn over the whole body and not just emitted from the hands. I'm calling bullshit on that. I know plot armor when I see it. Dwayne, delighted by the walking heater, thanked Jeong Hyeok. Moving around should definitely be easier now. Our boy, puzzled by his exaggerated behavior, asked if he didn't have a skill that could produce heat. The gentle giant replied that he didn't. As a matter of fact, he hadn't even considered such a situation before the death game thrust them into it. Jeong Hyeok remarked, that's always the case with L.A.G. Surviving in the game required one to always expect the unexpected. Anyway, they should move. Staying in the same place would definitely be dangerous. As the two Chads made their way through the snowy fields, our boy dove into his thoughts. From what he recalled about the room, there wasn't a need to search for a road. So long as you had a skill that could keep you warm, you'd inevitably clear the space. What was surprising, however, was the mission. To his knowledge, the only trial of the room should have been enduring the cold and snow. There shouldn't be any other living creatures in the room apart from them. So, in essence, the trial was asking them to kill each other. Dwayne, as gentle as he was, didn't seem to have realized that. But inevitably, he would, and when that happened, the outcome would be obvious. Of course, there was the option of waiting for someone else to enter. But that decision held many variables. And with variables came danger. He knew what he had to do. However, before he made that move, he needed to make sure there wasn't anyone else to kill. We cut to the duo still on the snowfields. This time, however, Lady Luck seemed to have smiled on them. In an excited tone, Dwayne pointed out a cave in the distance. It seemed they could finally escape the bitter cold. Wasting no time, the duo headed over. As they neared the entrance, Jeong Hyeok, with his usual paranoia, donned his lion's mask, his weapons at the ready. Puzzled, Dwayne asked what he was doing. The MC replied that he was getting ready, just in case they got jumped. Dwayne, too cold to bother with his nonsense, immediately rushed for the cave. The MC, however, stopped him. Did he have a death wish or something? With how stiff his body was, he'd definitely die if he was attacked in that state. Besides, it might be faint, but he could definitely hear some noise from the cave. Caution was necessary. With that in mind, the duo slowly made their way to the cave. Staying outside in the freezing cold wasn't an option, after all. As they walked, Jeong remarked that apart from the mission, the cave was also new. Throughout his countless regressions, he'd never seen it before. As such, he had no idea what could be waiting for them inside. But if there were living beings in the room, they'd definitely be in there. Feeling the walls, he noted that they weren't steady. In fact, with his current strength, he could probably break them apart with just his fist. He's talking big for someone who couldn't even save our mommy. Stupid asshole. Noticing the freezing Chad, he encouraged him to hold on a bit longer. Dwayne, ever the Chad, told him not to worry. Something like that couldn't faze him. Besides, compared to the outside, the cave felt more like a sauna. Okay, what's going on here? Why do I sense a BL tag popping up? Jeong Hyeok, with his normal murdery thoughts, remarked that Dwayne was a good guy. However, that didn't change the circumstances. If he couldn't find something to kill, he'd have no option but to delete Dwayne. It was the only way to advance to the next level. And so, with murder on his mind and an oblivious companion, the duo continued, their struggle for survival unending. We cut to them arriving at the cave's edge. Dwayne, all fired up, told the MC to leave the rest to him. He'd handle whatever came their way. Jeong Hyeok, trusting the brute to do brute things, let the giant lead. The cave turned out to be mostly empty, except for a tree in the middle. Dwayne, focused on the tree, failed to notice the suspicious movements of our boy behind him. Turns out this asshole had only let Dwayne lead, because it'd give him a better chance at ambushing him. If he were to kill the giant, now was the best chance. A well-aimed attack at the back of his head or neck was all it would take. If he did that, he'd immediately satisfy the clear condition for the room. Thinking of the clear condition, Jeong Hyeok's eyes widened in realization. The condition stated to kill any living being, not just people. If that was the case, then maybe the tree could also count. His hopes, however, were immediately crushed by some dire news from Dwayne. The tree was already dead, nothing but charcoal. Jeong Hyeok, cursing his luck, sighed. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy. When has the death game ever been kind to him? Noticing his solemn expression, Dwayne asked what was wrong. Our boy, however, brushed him off. It wasn't like he'd appreciate the thought even if he shared. Activating his skill, he set the tree on fire. Turning to the Chad, he told him to rest up. They'd explore the rest of the cave later. Dwayne immediately agreed. He'd been waiting for those magical words. We cut to the Chads resting by the campfire. Our Chad, always in his emo vibe, lamented his fate. It seemed until the day he left that cursed hell, or maybe died for real, he'd always be burdened by his choices. To kill or to save. Those were the only two moves the death game left him. Speaking of killing, he turned to Dwayne, asking why he didn't say anything about his flame skill. Surely he must have realized that skill could have come in handy in the snowfield. Dwayne, always a gentle soul, came up with a bunch of reasons as to why he didn't use it. Everything from stamina conservation to the flame being too tiny to keep both of them warm. All in all, it didn't matter to him. Whatever his reasons, he wouldn't have faulted him even if he froze to death. Hearing his words, the MC struggled with his choice even more. The more awesome Dwayne was, the harder it became to kill him. But what choice did he have? Dwayne, oblivious to his chaotic thoughts, thanked him. Because of him, he'd survived the previous room. Although he couldn't pay him back yet, he'd be sure to at least not be a burden. As for the flame skill, he should forget about it. He was already glad he could use him as a walking heater. Jeong Hyeok calmly listened to the giant Chad. He remarked that, surprisingly, Dwayne's thoughts were deeper than he'd expected. In fact, he might have already considered the possibility that they might need to kill each other. It's just that he was keeping quiet about it. Cursing, he wondered who'd said muscleheads were dumb. If he found that bastard, he'd surely feed him a two-piece combo. With a grave look, he wondered if he should have killed Dwayne earlier. Maybe that would have prevented variables from happening. Soon, however, his face dropped. Even if it's for survival, he really hated himself for having such thoughts. The cursed game had really twisted his personality, to the point where he couldn't bear to think about the person he'd become. Getting up, he instructed Dwayne to follow. They still had a mission to complete, and moves still needed to be made. Dwayne, however, didn't move, his gaze fixed on something behind the MC. Picking up on it, Jeong Hyeok immediately turned around, his killer demeanor back. Behind them was a new group of survivors. The man was Anton Reed, whose public attribute was a buff to a skill by 1 level. Currently, his highest skill level was 5. Beside the man was a samurai, or maybe a ninja mommy. I can't tell. My brain short-circuited the second I saw her rocking bod. The mommy's name was Bree Hudson. Her public skill was a debuff to agility every time she ate meat, which honestly is a bummer, but hey, she doesn't have to eat. What about them hands? Jeong Hyeok, oblivious to my down-bad thoughts, studied the duo. He noted that neither of them had weapons, but that couldn't fool him, especially with the clothes they were rocking. Those were obviously decent gear, probably giving hella buffs to their physical stats. Also, in Ninja Girl's case, her no-eater attribute, although negative, just meant that her private attribute was positive, so he should be on the lookout for that. The duo didn't look dangerous at first glance, but a little caution wouldn't hurt. If he'd known the situation would turn out like this, he'd have definitely geared up. But now, it was too late. Dwayne, breaking the silence, addressed the duo. He remarked that he hadn't expected to find someone in there. Anton replied, saying it was the same for them. Noticing their odd closeness, Jeong asked if they were a couple. The duo confirmed this. Switching gears, Anton asked if they too were a couple. Jeong immediately denied the allegation, saying they were just travel buddies and weren't clashing swords. Addressing the couple, he asked if they had met each other in L.A.G. The couple, flustered, fumbled their reply, saying they had met long before the death game. Picking up on their odd behavior, Jeong Hyeok immediately came to a conclusion. Those bastards were fucking lying. The couple, oblivious to their ruse being exposed, continued with their lying nonsense. They claimed they'd gone on an engagement trip, but everything after that was a blur. Their next memories were of waking up in the death game. Our boy, choosing to overlook such blatant deception, asked what they were doing in the cave. The duo replied that they were looking for somewhere quiet to bump uglies, and from the blush on Bree's face, Anton must have done his thing. Dwayne, in a mocking tone, teased the couple. They sure were healthy to think of cheeks in such a situation. Our boy, a bit jealous, and also finding the topic meaningless, decided to end the chatter. In his usual cold tone, he bid the couple goodbye. They were free to go about their humping. With Dwayne in tow, the duo turned to leave. Anton, a bit flustered, called out to the MC. He informed them that the cave was empty. There wasn't a need to check the deeper parts. Bree chimed in, claiming they'd already searched everywhere and found nothing. The MC, always a Chad, told them not to worry about it. Whether they found something or not was none of their business. They should just go about their day. Besides, the cheeks were getting cold. The sussy duo, with no reason to counter, watched the pair leave. From the anxious look on their faces, it was obvious these bastards were hiding something. Dwayne, surprisingly perceptive for a brute, told Jeong that the duo was lying. The MC agreed with him. However, there was no need to speculate. They could just confirm it themselves. And so, with quiet steps, the duo made it to the back of the cave where a shadowy silhouette was veiled in the darkness. Signaling to Dwayne to get ready, Jeong used his skill, light, illuminating the area in front of them. To their shock, a couple lay dead on the ground, their corpses riddled with bullet holes. Noticing the bloody mess, the MC noted that the murder must have taken place recently. In addition, the souls were already extracted. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was responsible. Dwayne pointed out the bullet-like wounds. The couple didn't have any weapons on them, so was it a skill? The MC, more experienced, confirmed his guess. In a mocking tone, he insulted the duo. It seemed they didn't have the brains to scheme. If they had informed them of the corpses beforehand, they could have redirected their suspicions. But alas, their brains must have been flushed with all the clapping. Locking in, he noted that the bullet-like skill was one he was familiar with. From the looks of it, it wasn't that high level just yet. Although challenging, the confrontation wasn't one they couldn't handle. Turning to the giant, he informed him that their clear condition target had basically fallen into their laps. This was a chance they couldn't waste. Noticing Dwayne's sullen expression, he asked if he was hesitant. The Chad replied that he couldn't hesitate for people like that. Besides, the fact that they were clapping while he was without bitches already signed them up for death. Their conversation, however, was interrupted by footsteps echoing in the cave. Someone was coming. That someone turned out to be Anton. The sketchy bastard, clearly up to no good, activated his skill formless sword. With the manifestation of the sword, the brute peeped around the corner, searching for his prey. What met him, however, was a bright flash blinding his sketchy ass. Jeong Hyeok, not one to waste time, immediately lunged at Anton, his pickaxe at the ready. With a brutal blow, he spiked the shit out of Anton, leaving a gaping hole in his skull. Just like that, the bastard was done, leaving behind juicy souls to be reaped. Jeong Hyeok, completely unfazed by the murder, noted that the clear conditions had been met. They could leave that room anytime they wanted. However, there was still a bug that needed to be squashed. Turning to Dwayne, he warned him not to stick his head out unless he wanted a bloody surprise from Bree. He informed him that, if his guess was correct, Bree must be the mastermind behind everything. The couple had been killed by a bullet skill, yet Anton had a sword skill, so it was clearly her doing. In fact, the little wench must be out there somewhere, aiming her treacherous fingers at them. And true to his words, the ninja mommy Bree was dual-wielding them hands, ready to poke our boys. I don't know about them, but getting clapped with that outfit on isn't the worst death. All in all, Bree was the real threat to look out for, especially since she didn't seem to care about her companion's death. Turning to Dwayne, he asked what skill he had. Noticing the Chad's hesitation, the MC told him not to share if he wasn't willing. Dwayne clarified the misunderstanding. It wasn't that he didn't want to share. It's just that his skills were complete trash in the situation. Jeong Hyeok, always a believer in there being no useless skills, decided to plan with what they had available. Bree's skill, although deadly, wasn't at a level where it could penetrate the body. The key to surviving this ordeal was to avoid getting hit in critical areas. Addressing the giant, he informed him that he had a plan and his help was crucial. We cut to a while after the plan had been shared. Dwayne, mulling it over, noted that it might just be possible. If it's a matter of physical strength, he should definitely be able to do it. He was staking his life, so Jeong better not miss. Our boy, brimming with confidence, told him not to worry. Who would miss such a mommy? We switched to Bree, the scheming mommy. The nasty wench, a bit frustrated, cursed Anton. She had brought him along thinking he'd be useful, but the bastard turned out to be trash. It was just shitty luck that she had to deal with the new duo. The plan had always been to kill the couple and move on, but that was already up in smoke. Well, not that it mattered. If they dared stick their heads out, she'd definitely give them a nasty surprise. As she was still in her villain yappery, a surprising development occurred before her. Anton's corpse was suddenly dragged, disappearing behind the walls. Before she could piece together what the hell was going on, The Chads charged at her, using Anton's corpse as a literal meat shield. Bree, shocked by the odd development, froze. Soon, however, she locked in, unleashing a barrage of air bullets at the charging foes. Dwayne, undeterred by the relentless attack, continued his charge, his war cry booming. Bree, not backing down, doubled the barrage, calling for the fools to die. With well-aimed shots, she blew off Anton's hand, leaving a nasty graze on Dwayne's arm as well. Dwayne didn't stop. He continued his charge toward the deadly wench. Finally, Bree ran out of bullets, forcing her to reload. Dwayne, noticing the change, called out to the MC. Jeong Hyeok, not one to disappoint, spawned behind Dwayne, his bloodlust brimming. Bree, noticing the MC, realized he must have known about her skill. But it didn't matter. In 2 seconds, the reload would be done, and she'd light him the fuck up. She commended their desperate attempt, but this was where their journey ended. Jeong Hyeok, however, threw her a curveball. Forget closing the distance, he simply yeeted the pickaxe, aiming straight for the cocky wench. Bree, still brimming with confidence, laughed at his foolish attempt. She could just dodge the throw. Our boy, always one step ahead, had already accounted for that possibility. In that critical moment, he activated his trump card, Lion's Roar. The skill induced a feeling of fear in opponents, stunning them for a second. It wasn't an OP skill, and the duration wasn't long. However, a second was more than enough. It was enough to stun the cocky bitch, leaving her vulnerable to the pickaxe. And so, in a bloody twist, the ninja mommy got poked. Her bouncy plot did nothing to cushion the blow. Jeong Hyeok, carried by momentum, crashed to the ground. He kept his eyes on Bree, waiting for the scheming bitch to bite it. Bree, however, refused to die so willingly. With a spiteful gaze, she vowed to take Jeong down with her. Noticing the vengeful act, the MC cursed the poisonous wench. Couldn't she just die in peace? Where was her dignity in death? Vulnerable and out of options, he decided to tank the shot, hoping his passive skills would be enough to save his ass. In that desperate moment, Dwayne came in clutch. In a genuinely Chad-like move, he yeeted Anton's body straight at Bree. The vengeful wench, not expecting the sudden development, got crushed by Anton's corpse, a sickening moan escaping her lips. The boys, quick to react, targeted the vile woman. They needed to be ready in case she had more surprises planned. To their relief, however, Bree was done, having fainted from the blow. Our boy, always a gentleman, handed Dwayne the pickaxe. He should deal the finishing blow. Of course, the souls would be his as well. Dwayne, delighted by the honor, thanked the MC for his generosity. With a savage face, he wielded the pickaxe, ready to bless Bree with death. Soon, however, his gentle soul returned. He couldn't do it. He couldn't kill someone in cold blood. Turning to the MC, he begged for Bree to be spared. She was already out cold. She wasn't a threat to them anymore. Jeong Hyeok eyed the Chad, his thoughts cryptic. Soon, however, he snatched the pickaxe from Dwayne. If that was Dwayne's choice, he wouldn't argue with him. However, for himself, there was no way he'd let the poisonous bitch live. This was L.A.G. No good deed went unpunished in that vile hell. Saying so, he brought the pickaxe down on Bree's skull, bathing the ground in her blood. Done with the brutal yet necessary action, Jeong addressed Dwayne. It wasn't that he liked killing or that he was a bloodthirsty fiend eager to clap cheeks. His rule was very simple. Kill whoever tries to kill you. This would always be the case, no matter who it was. With the subtle threat out of the way, the MC pocketed Bree's soul. Thanks to her generous donation, he was back to 5 souls. Turning his back to the gentle giant, he advised him to rest up and, more importantly, decide what he would do moving forward. Dwayne, burdened by the grim reality, watched him go in silence. Deep down, he knew what was expected of him, but because of his morals, it was easier said than done. Jeong Hyeok, understanding the tough choice Dwayne had to make, gave him space. If possible, he didn't want to fight, which is why he let him decide instead of forcing him. The clear conditions for the room had already been met, so Jeong didn't care what Dwayne did. He could leave, or he could fight. Either way, Jeong was down for whatever. Throwing hands was his specialty after all. Perhaps the giant was right, and they should have spared Bree. Perhaps she would have been so grateful that she thanked them with some cheeks. But what about the other possibility? What if they'd created a new foe, one who'd bide their time and stab them in the back? That wasn't an ideal situation, especially in that cursed world where death always came knocking. Besides, like Lord Newton said, for every action, there's a reaction. If you aim for someone's life, you should be ready to lose your own. Done with his inner turmoil, Jeong Hyeok gazed at the corpses before him. He noted that the man had died protecting the woman. From the looks of it, they were a real couple, unlike Bree and Anton, who were clearly just clapping cheeks. Having a FWB in a death game is wild, but hey, do you boo-boo? After giving the couple a makeshift funeral, Jeong Hyeok offered a silent prayer. He didn't know if heaven existed in such a cursed place. However, if it did, he sincerely hoped the two of them would reunite there. Done with his good deed, our boy noticed a strange mark on the wall. Before he could explore, his attention was drawn to heavy footsteps behind him. Dwayne, throwing shade at our boy, remarked that Jeong had more humanity than he thought. Our boy, not one to back down, teased that Dwayne should have already known that, given Jeong had already saved his life, preventing him from dying like a wet dog. Dwayne, with nothing to counter, admitted his loss. Switching gears, Jeong asked if he'd made up his mind. Dwayne replied that he liked Jeong. Our boy, always a Chad, immediately turned down the confession. He wasn't a swordsman, so why should he clash swords? Dwayne, undeterred, expressed his desire to travel together, though he didn't want to kill humans. Gazing at the naive companion, Jeong subtly warned him. There's no guarantee the enemies would feel the same way. However, he was free to do as he wished, so long as he didn't get in Jeong's way. Dwayne's non-killing disposition was one Jeong was familiar with. Heck, even he had it back in the beginning. But that mindset didn't belong in L.A.G. Jeong had learned painfully that such naive thinking could only spell your doom. Guess Dwayne would just have to learn on his own. Speaking of the gentle giant, he questioned Jeong about what he was up to. The MC replied, informing him of his findings. Dwayne, analyzing the mysterious pattern, noted that it resembled a flaming sword. However, there was no need to speculate. They could simply smash the wall and find out. Cocking his guns, Dwayne channeled his brute strength and, in a thunderous bang, struck the sturdy wall. The once imposing structure immediately crumbled under the Chad's might, helpless against such brute force. Jeong, watching from the sidelines, noted that Dwayne's strength was way higher than his. In fact, most people wouldn't even stand a chance against the brute Chad. Dwayne, oblivious to the MC's sussy glazing and wandering eye, pointed out an obscured object in the hole. A sword. Our boy, delighted by the unexpected windfall, calmly retrieved the blade. It was the blazing blade, its unique ability being to hold heat. If equipped, it would buff agility by 2%. Swinging the sword around, Jeong remarked that, as expected, it was a great blade, not only sharp, but, if used with a skill, capable of becoming hotter. Dwayne, watching from the sidelines, expressed his confusion. How could a sword produce fire? It didn't make sense. Really, brah? I know you're a brute, but goddamn. Jeong, sharing my sentiment, looked at Dwayne like he was the biggest idiot. They'd just fought a wench who could literally shoot bullets from her fingers. So how was he surprised by that? Or was he too distracted by Bree's rocking bod to notice such obvious things? All in all, it didn't matter. Addressing the giant, Jeong asked if he could keep the sword. Dwayne readily agreed. It was Jeong who had found it, after all. Jeong, always a generous Chad, gave Dwayne his pickaxe, making it clear he was a generous poppy. Dwayne, satisfied with his new weapon, swung it around. He was sure he'd do some damage with that thing. With their business done, the duo turned to leave. The clear conditions might have been met, but this was L.A.G. Who knew what shit show the twisted game might suddenly throw their way? We cut to the Chads at the exit of the cave. Dwayne, dreading the cold, expressed his reluctance to head out. Jeong Hyeok, always a generous Chad, handed him the blazing blade. He had his light skill, so Dwayne could use the sword for now. Dwayne, not one to turn down generosity, especially from his poppy, immediately equipped the sword. And so, with their preparations done, the duo finally left the cave, braving the harsh cold. We switched to the duo still traversing the snowfield, trudging through the relentless cold. In front of them lay a grim, yet expected sight. A corpse sprawled in the snow. Analyzing the corpse's state, Dwayne remarked that he had probably died from the cold. Jeong, always cynical, pointed out the missing soul. That wasn't a simple accident. However, it had nothing to do with them. They should hurry. Staying would only endanger their lives. With those words, the two pressed forward, their determined gazes fixed on the horizon. They continued their hellish journey, pushing themselves until they finally reached the exit to the freezing abyss. The cold was brutal, but they had made it. In typical L.A.G. fashion, they were given a choice. They could either go to the next room, B332, or choose the mysterious space in between, B3 Room 2. Jeong Hyeok, a bit conflicted, paused to assess the situation. The ever-changing nature of L.A.G had been chipping away at his advantage. His once reliable knowledge of the future was becoming obsolete. In such a volatile environment, every decision carried weight. Dwayne, unbothered by his inner turmoil, told him to decide quickly. His crown jewels and future descendants were at risk of being frozen stiff. Jeong, puzzled by his sudden trust, questioned the giant. Didn't he know his decision could lead to his death? Dwayne, always the happy-go-lucky one, told him not to worry about it. He wouldn't blame him even if he died. Besides, if you leave your life in someone's hands, the least you can do is accept your fate in case shit hits the fan. Our boy, smiling at Dwayne's simplicity, didn't waste time. From now on, Dwayne should let him decide everything. If he does, he'll be swimming in bitches. With that, he confidently chose the next hell. The system notification sounded, welcoming the players Lee Jeong Hyeok and Dwayne the Chad Smith to room B32. Upon their arrival in the new room, the freezing cold finally retreated. Dwayne, obviously delighted, exclaimed that he finally felt alive again. The room was completely different from the last. The system notification, always punctual, announced the mission status. It stated that the main goal to escape B331 was a success. In addition, they had completed the side quest of decreasing the number of any living beings by 1. As such, both players would be rewarded with 6 souls each. Our boy, calmly pocketing the rewards, advised Dwayne to rest up. They'd head to the next room once fully refreshed. Dwayne readily agreed. There was no rush. The next room would probably be another hell anyway. Jeong Hyeok, taking a look at his current skills, noted that his highest skill level was 4. With his 11 souls, he could definitely raise it higher. But there was no need. He'd rather observe the situation first and respond accordingly. His biggest problem, however, was the active skills. He needed something stronger than light or flame if he were to continue on. The only consolation was that his drip and equipment were excellent. Everything from the elastic jacket to Tae-min's black hammer. He was pretty secure in that department, not to mention the pièce de résistance, the blazing sword. Something that OP had no business being on the 3rd basement level. But now that he had it, he was sure it would be useful even beyond the 5th basement floor. With their loadout done, the duo assembled. It was time to head to the next hell. Upon entering, the duo found themselves in another strange room. Before they could analyze the room further, the system notification sounded, announcing the mission details. The public mission was the weight of life, which honestly sounded ominous as fuck. The first goal was to make a deal by any means necessary. The second goal was to get rid of something big and heavy, aka your mama. If they did that, they'd be rewarded with 10 souls, random equipment, and, lastly, a random skill exchange coin. Jeong Hyeok, the experienced regressor, noted the odd change. They were only on the 3rd basement level, yet L.A.G was already issuing 2 goals and 2 rewards. The implications were obvious. The difficulty of the room was crazy high. As troubling as that was, there was something more urgent they needed to address. Turns out they weren't alone in that room. In fact, the room was packed with dozens of shady folks just hanging around. Not to mention, at the far end of the room, a bloody drape divided the space, probably concealing horrors beyond. Dwayne, puzzled by the development, asked Jeong for clarification. The MC, however, ignored him. He was focused on something more dire. The place was completely different from his earlier regressions. Thus, his advantage was officially useless. Before he could mull it over, a figure called out to him. This rat-looking bastard was Song Wiri-yong. His public attribute was a buff to speed when wearing equipment that raised movement. Currently, his highest skill level was 5. Jeong Hyeok, obviously suspicious of the rat bastard, told him to speak. Whatever he had to say could be said from way over there. The sketchy Song told him not to be so mean. He understood his caution, but honestly, he was hurting his feelings. There was no need to be so wary. He just needed to drop some exposition on him real quick. According to Song, the place was a makeshift zone for people to trade, among other things. Of course, that wasn't the official purpose of the room, but it was the only way they could grow their strength and hopefully defeat the monstrosity behind the drapes. The items on sale were basically trash, but Jeong noticed some decent and maybe useful items mixed within. Song, an experienced peddler, asked Jeong if anything had caught his eye. Our boy, an equally experienced haggler, immediately played it cool, not giving away his edge. Addressing the sketchy peddler, he asked how much for the health potion. Song, startled by Jeong's knowledge, questioned how he'd known souls were the official currency. Most people didn't know about that, let alone how to take them out. Jeong Hyeok, not bothering with his nonsense, asked how much. Song replied, asking for 2 souls. Our boy immediately countered, offering 1. The two argued about the price for a while until Jeong unleashed his trump card, active skill, Asian mother haggling. Overwhelmed by the generations of haggling experience, Song finally lost it, telling Jeong to get lost. He didn't need to sell to him. The MC, always calm, told him not to be so hasty. His final offer was the skill shard alongside the health potion for 2 souls. Song could take it or leave it. In fact, if his current skill wasn't so trash, he wouldn't even be buying that shit. Song, finally caving, accepted the trade. We learned some crucial lore of the death game. When making a trade, you extend the offer with the left hand and collect the items with the right hand. Of course, this isn't foolproof, as some bastards like Song could easily con you out of your souls if you aren't careful. The rat bastard, proud of his deception, mocked the MC. He'd be sure to use the souls well, and true to his words, the ugly bastard immediately used the souls, raising his highest skill level to 7. Jeong Hyeok, obviously livid, gazed threateningly at Song. However, he didn't immediately react. As unfortunate as it was, he was used to such occurrences. Some might even outright aim for his life, so this much was nothing. The fact that Song could so openly con them must mean he had a gang he could trust. And true to his deductions, the sketchy bastards surrounded the MC, their bloodlust obvious. Jeong Hyeok, unfazed by the looming foes, addressed Song. If he wanted to keep his trash life, he should immediately give back the souls. Song, feeling cocky, mocked the MC. It seemed he didn't quite understand his situation. Besides, he'd already used the souls, so there was nothing to give back. Before he could continue with his villain yappery, Jeong delivered a brutal kick, sending the ugly rat bastard flying. Approaching the sketchy thief, he promised him death. Death delivered by his own hands. Song, enraged, challenged the MC. He'd planned to go easy on him after taking the souls, but now that was out, he'd be sure to kill the bastard. Saying so, he activated his skill, conjuring an ominous purple shine on his palm. Jeong, however, wasn't idle. He immediately kicked Song's hand, crushing the treacherous palm with a sickening crunch. The bastard, enraged and in pain, cursed at the MC. Who gave him the right to do this to him? Our boy didn't relent. With a decisive blow, he drove the hammer into Song's mouth, opening an extra hole for the rat bastard. Song, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, called out to the gang. What were they waiting for? They should kill Jeong immediately. He wanted him dead. He wouldn't rest until he drank soup from his decaying skull. Jeong Hyeok sighed. It seemed, even until the end, Song had no thoughts of giving up. Well, if that was the case, he'd left him no other choice. Saying so, he swiftly plunged the hammer into Song's skull, putting an end to the thieving bastard. One of the gang members charged forward, his thirst for revenge evident. Before he could get far, however, a giant palm grabbed him, slamming his face against the wall. The gentle giant had finally joined the fight. Dwayne, still holding the yeeted foe, addressed Jeong. He understood the crimes of the rat song, but did he have to kill him? Jeong Hyeok, as calm as ever, addressed the gentle giant. He let him know this was how he'd always be. A soul in L.A.G was akin to your life force, and he'd kill anyone who threatened his, no matter who it was. Drawing his sword, he emphasized his stance. Whoever got in his way would receive the same treatment, so Dwayne should think carefully. This was L.A.G. In here, good guys were always the first to die. If Dwayne was the kind to pity such scumbags, then his end wasn't far off anyway. It was unfortunate, but it seemed the time to choose had finally arrived. As the two Chads stared each other down, the tension in the air palpable, the rest of Song's gang watched in shock. How had the rat bastard died so easily? Not that it mattered to them. They could simply pillage his remains and make some quick change. Their plan seemed set in stone, but something about the odd situation in front of them caught their attention. Why were the two lovers fighting? Trouble in paradise, maybe? Well, that only worked in their favor, so who were they to question it? Signaling for their assassin mate to move, the gang prepared their counterattack. The assassin, acting fast, immediately charged forward, aiming a sneak attack at Dwayne. The gentle giant, a second too late to react, watched helplessly as the assassin's blade slashed at him. The evil bastard, not satisfied with a simple sword attack, activated his active skill, Snake's Poison, coating the blade in a deadly venom. However, the assassin made a crucial mistake. Dwayne wasn't alone. Jeong Hyeok, acting swiftly, used his light skill, temporarily blinding the stealthy assassin. That second was all the time they needed. When the bastard opened his eyes, Dwayne's knuckle sandwich was waiting for him, blitzing the assassin into oblivion. The blow was so strong that the assassin's face caved in, his eye sockets rupturing. Despite this, Dwayne wasn't done. He immediately exerted more force, pinning the bastard into the ground. With his knuckles bloody and his eyes finally opened, the gentle giant accepted his naivety. His way of thinking had been wrong. The rest of the gang, undeterred by Dwayne's savage brutality, lunged at Jeong, calling for his death. The MC, unfazed, analyzed the gang's attack plan. They had opted for a pincer attack. Judging by their lack of hesitation, this was clearly not their first ambush. Going a step further, he analyzed the skills they were using. Thanks to his countless regressions, he had become skilled at identifying the abilities used in L.A.G, and as long as he could identify them, he could handle them. Reacting quickly, Jeong conjured a ball of fire in his palm before spraying it at the charging foes. The fire skill's level was low, likely high enough to deal minimal damage to the gang, but they didn't know that. The attack served its purpose, halting the enemy's momentum. Capitalizing on this advantage, Jeong immediately yeeted the black hammer, striking one thug straight in the eye. With the fall of the fool, the enemy's count dropped by 1. A new thug, L.A.G, enraged by the MC's brutal kill, charged at him. He vowed to deliver Jeong a painful death, one so gruesome that he wouldn't close his eyes even in death. Jeong Hyeok, unrattled by his yappery, calmly assumed his battle stance. Maybe if the thugs had attacked in unison, it would have been troublesome, but unfortunately for them, they had lost their composure and were charging solo like rabid dogs. Locking in, Jeong unleashed his fire skill on L.A.G. The cunning foe, more agile than Jeong had anticipated, immediately dodged the attack and resumed his charge. With a brutal slash, he aimed for Jeong's neck. The MC easily blocked the attack. Thanks to his strongbones passive skill, the slash was nothing more than a tickle. L.A.G, not expecting such monstrous defense, froze for a moment. Before he could gather his wits, Jeong blessed him with a hot kiss to the skull, stabbing straight through his peanut brain. With another enemy down, Jeong turned to face the remaining fools. The bastards, unrelenting, charged at the MC. Jeong, not one to waste time, launched his own attack, slashing his blazing sword at the enemies. He comboed the attack with a fire strike, savagely burning the foes' heads. Watching the screaming thugs, Jeong showed no mercy, unleashing another fire strike to burn the bastards to cinders. Done with the brutal battle, the MC casually collected the souls. Addressing Dwayne, he asked if he still harbored naive thoughts about peaceful coexistence. Like he'd said before, L.A.G was a death hell where only doom awaited the foolishly kind. Gazing sternly at him, Jeong asked Dwayne to make up his mind. His hour of hesitation was over. Dwayne took a moment to mull it over before turning his attention to the beaten thug. With a sickening stomp, he crushed the bastard's skull, putting an end to his rotten existence. The giant, finally manning the hell up, told Jeong he was right. In L.A.G, death was repaid with death, and he had no intention of avoiding it any longer. Jeong, proud of his boo, encouraged Dwayne's growth. In that hell, the death of another fueled their own strength. And true to his words, Jeong immediately utilized the loot dropped by Song, acquiring the passive skill Calm Mind from the skill shard. The skill guaranteed composure regardless of the situation. With their massacre complete, Dwayne eyed the other people in the room. Despite the huge fight, no one had intervened. Jeong explained that it was expected. Most people in L.A.G were strangers to one another. It didn't make sense to stick your nose into someone else's business. The only ones who might have intervened were Song's gang, but they were already decimated. Besides, the crowd had just witnessed them annihilate Song and his group. Most wouldn't want to fuck with them after that. As Jeong was still glazing, a clanging sound came from behind the drapes, startling everyone. Whatever it was, it clearly had everyone on edge. Dwayne noted the sound of breathing behind the drapes. Jeong Hyeok, equally puzzled, replied that he didn't know what it was either. But whatever it was, it had everyone scared shitless, so it probably wasn't anything good. A loud voice interrupted their discussion. The voice belonged to Jeong Hyeok, a Chad with flashy hair and killer drip. His public attribute allowed him to use 2 active skills simultaneously. Currently, his highest skill level was 6. The MC, always suspicious of new arrivals, invested 11 souls to level up his calm breathing. With the level raised to 6, his recovery would improve significantly. The new Chad introduced himself, telling the duo his name. Jeong, however, cut him off. He told him to get to the point. What did he want? Byung, with a dazzling smile, expressed his desire to join the Chads. Oh? Is this a love triangle I sense? Watch out, Dwayne. Someone's coming for your boo. Dwayne, like a jealous boyfriend, asked Byung if he was trustworthy. Byung replied that trust wasn't necessary. What mattered was his ability. If they wanted to survive, cooperation was inevitable. Jeong Hyeok, always in his murdery vibes, warned Byung not to think of betraying them. If he did, then no matter the situation, Jeong would drop everything and kill his ass. Byung, unfazed by the obvious yet slightly gay threat, told him not to worry. Despite how he looked, he was a pretty chill guy. Besides, he had no intention of dying just yet, so betrayal wasn't in the cards. Locking in, Byung pointed at the drapes. As much as they wanted to leave, they had a big problem. Something big and vile was waiting for them behind the bloody curtain. Dwayne, the jealous boyfriend, immediately raised his complaints. He didn't like or trust Byung, so traveling with him was out of the question. Besides, the flashy bastard was clearly after his poppy, so why would he give him the chance? Byung countered his objection, pointing out that while the duo was strong, even with his help, the task would still be nearly impossible. Jeong Hyeok, picking up on the ominous tone, asked Byung what he meant. The flashy Chad, finding it easier to show rather than explain, led the duo to the drapes. Drawing them back, he revealed the other half of the room. And it was hellish. Not only was it bloody, hinting at a bleak fate for whoever stepped inside, but it was also discouraging since the exit door was far across the room, meaning they'd have no choice but to face the monstrosity guarding it. Speaking of monstrosities, a heavy, bloody foot slammed into the ground, crushing the concrete floor beneath it. This foot belonged to the megalithic man, a dreadful stone behemoth towering over the petrified players. I'd like to describe what it looks like, but again, lag is on some bullshit, so I'm struggling to find the words. Honestly, what the fuck is this? As expected, our Chads were terrified, especially since the quagmire-looking bastard was glaring daggers at them. Byung, continuing his presentation, introduced the dreadful foe to the party. He explained that the megalithic man was the true obstacle to clearing the room. Luckily, the fiend never left its half of the room, so they were still relatively safe. The gentle giant, visibly shaken by the behemoth, noted that it towered well over 3 meters, a genuine giant, unlike his bootleg title. The mission stated they needed to get rid of something big and heavy, so this was clearly it. Jeong Hyeok, equally spooked, stared at the foe. To think he'd meet the behemoth on the 3rd basement floor. Just what the hell was going on with Lag? Turning to Dwayne, Jeong asked if they could solo the Guardian. Dwayne immediately rejected the idea. No matter how he looked at it, that was completely beyond their means. But what about Jeong? Did he have some big-brain strategy to overcome this obstacle? Jeong, always practical, told him to forget about it. The enemy wasn't one to go down easily, even with the best strategy. Shifting his attention to Byung, Jeong asked why he was so insistent on tagging along. What was he scheming? Byung replied that his reasons were simple. The two of them were strong, giving him the best chance of survival. Based on his analysis, 3 people should be enough to handle the Guardian, but most refused to try, fearing for their lives. Of course, there were those who accepted, but the MC and Dwayne annihilated them, leaving him back at square one. The MC pressed further, asking why he didn't try teaming up with anyone else. Byung explained that his involvement with the sketchy gang basically ruled out any cooperation with the other players. Because of those bastards, he'd been forced to move around a lot of corpses, which inevitably put a wedge between him and everyone else. But even that wasn't enough to secure his safety, as the treacherous thugs still ganged up and ambushed him, nearly killing him. Noticing the scars on Byung's stomach, the MC's eyes widened in shock. In a panicked voice, he asked Byung how he'd managed to heal the wounds so quickly. Flustered by the exaggerated reaction, Byung replied that it was thanks to his skills. He explained that he could deal with external wounds based on his skill level, though the action exhausted him, sometimes to the point of being unable to move. Jeong Hyeok, unnerved by the revelation, noted that this was a skill he'd never seen before, not even across his countless regressions. Did this mean Lag had new passive skills as well? He'd felt something was off before, but now it was obvious. The missions, enemies, and skills in this regression were constantly changing, and the death game had been wilding ever since he woke up. This might just be a guess, or maybe a strong feeling, but this life felt like his last in Lag. Byung, oblivious to the MC's ominous realization, called out. He asked what their next move was. Would they tackle the Guardian together? Jeong Hyeok, never one to waste time, immediately agreed. Delaying wouldn't do them any good. Dwayne, the tsundere, chimed in. Although he didn't like the flashy Chad, his hands were tied in this situation. They might as well get it over with. Locking in, Jeong upgraded his strong bones to level 7. Though confident in his physical defense, a little preparation wouldn't hurt. Speaking of preparation, it was overkill to tackle the behemoth with their current skills and levels. The only solution was to gather souls and raise their levels. But even then, their battle strategy was severely limited. A full frontal assault was the only feasible tactic, though survival was doubtful. Byung, quick on the uptake, volunteered to gather everyone. Jeong, however, told him to chill. Even if they did, it still wouldn't be enough. Turning to the desolate players, the MC shouted to get their attention. He let them know their current fate was absolute trash. They were just sheep waiting to die. The only difference was when and how. That said, he was giving them two choices. They could either combine their strength and help take down the Guardian, or they could die by their hands, right then and there. The choice was theirs. Fight together as comrades, or forcefully gift their souls and lives to him. Byung, visibly shocked, told him to hold the fuck up. What did he mean, their hands? Was he including him in the smoke as well? Turning to Dwayne, he pleaded for him to talk some sense into Jeong. Dwayne, unfazed, told him to chill out. Although Jeong's methods were unconventional, they were the reason he was still alive today. Byung should sit back and trust their poppy. One of the players responded to Jeong's provocation. He warned Jeong not to throw words around so carelessly, especially when they carried such obvious threats. Sure, the trio might be strong, but even for them, handling such a large group was impossible. Besides, what was stopping them from just killing the cocky MC? This faded-looking bastard was Mark Rowan. His public attribute was a strong strong voice. Currently, his highest skill level was 6. Analyzing this Chad, who seemed to be high on mushrooms, Jeong Hyeok noted that his aura was different. From the looks of it, Mark was the true boss of the group. The reason the dearly departed Song and his gang couldn't fully control the room was probably because of him. Our boy, refusing to back down, doubled down on his threat. He let Mark know he was dead serious. The only question was whether Mark really wanted to test him. The faded Chad immediately backed off. He had no desire to fight Jeong. Besides, the MC was right. The people in that room were at their limit. A change was necessary before things spiraled into total chaos. Addressing Jeong, Mark asked what the plan was. How did he intend to kill the Guardian while keeping everyone safe? Hearing such naive words, Jeong chuckled. Mark, puzzled by the reaction, asked what was so funny. Jeong replied, telling him to cut the bullshit. What did he mean, keep everyone safe? Some were obviously going to die. It was inevitable. The only thing he was certain of was that their chances of survival were much higher if they pooled their strength and fought the Guardian as a group. In fact, Mark must have already known this. That's why they could have that conversation in the first place. With those words, the MC ended the debate. The time for talking was over. It was time to act. Before they could move, however, a loud bang erupted behind them, startling the group. The dreadful noise came from the Guardian punching the steel gate, seemingly testing its limits. Dwayne, sweating bullets, asked Byung if the Guardian usually behaved like that. Byung denied it, explaining that although it occasionally hit the bars, it was never to that degree. The rest of the bots murmured in agreement. Something was definitely off. Even a bootleg Garcia chimed in, asking nervously if they'd be okay. Don't worry, mommy. Our boy will protect you this time. But of course, this was L.A.G. Nothing ever went according to plan in this cursed world. With one mighty punch, the Guardian shattered the steel gates, obliterating the last safety net for the players. With a menacing glare, the behemoth locked eyes with the group, who could only watch in shock and horror as their safe zone was annihilated. Dwayne, cursing their shitty luck, remarked that they were all in the same boat now. Whether they wanted it or not, the other players would have to fight. Byung, also cursing, lamented that they hadn't even formulated a plan. How were they going to tackle the behemoth in such a manner? Jeong, unfazed by the unfair development, told the Chads to lock in. Any prior plans were effectively out the window. The only thing they could do was focus and respond accordingly. The Guardian, unbothered by their rattled state, made the first move. Crouching low, it launched itself toward the group with terrifying speed that defied its enormous size and weight. The MC, recognizing the lethal intent, immediately shouted for everyone to dodge. The squad complied, narrowly avoiding the charging doom. Some players, however, weren't as lucky. Caught in the behemoth's path, they were blitzed into oblivion. With anguished screams, their bodies were reduced to mangled heaps, blood pooling where they once stood. Jeong Hyeok analyzed the baleful foe. Its overwhelming durability, absurd speed, and devastating attack power were enough to one-shot anything it touched. No matter how he looked at it, they were well and truly fucked. The bots also picked up on this, their expressions turning sullen in desperation. Collectively, they all had one thought. That bastard Jeong wanted them to fight such a beast? Was he out of his mind? Jeong Hyeok, as if sensing their doubts, shouted at them to focus. He instructed them to put distance between themselves and attack the Guardian with ranged skills. They were to target its legs, hoping to limit its mobility. Despite the great instructions, none of it reached the players. With a charging behemoth before them, they were too busy protecting their own lives to worry about the ramblings of a stranger. And so, without coordination, the inevitable happened. The behemoth yeeted the players, sending their mangled corpses flying like rag dolls. Some unlucky fools were slammed into the wall, their deaths as pathetic as their lives. Jeong Hyeok, watching all of this from the sidelines, cursed. Forget about tactics. At this rate, they'd all be wiped out. Unfortunately, it seemed everything would have to fall on him yet again. Running around the room, he aimed to collect as many souls as possible. Everything would inevitably depend on his strength, so he might as well increase his level as much as possible. Mark, also noting the unfavorable development, decided to act. Activating his strong voice skill, he repeated Jeong's instructions to everyone in the room. Because of his strong throat, his words cut through the panic, finally reaching the players. With seamless coordination, the players surrounded the foe, eager for a counterattack. One mommy even had time to rock a thong, because what better way to fight a boss than with a killer wedgie? Jeong Hyeok, still on his scavenger hunt, commended Mark. Thanks to his quick thinking, the situation was barely salvaged. Not to mention his ingenious use of the strong voice skill. Jeong hadn't even known it could be used like that. Well, not that it mattered at the moment. He had more important things to do. Moving from corpse to corpse, Jeong ignored the shame of plundering the dead. So what if he looked like a hyena feeding on corpses? He was determined to do anything to survive. We shift to the players. With a coordinated assault, they launched their skills at the behemoth, showering it in a barrage of attacks. One bot, feeling cocky, stopped to taunt the foe, his lips curling up in a mocking grin. This, however, proved to be a foolish mistake, as the fiend easily brushed off the flame attack, pouncing brutally on the cocky dude. With anguished screams, another foolish player fell, his death equally as foolish. Jeong Hyeok, still observing from the sidelines, marveled at the bot's stupidity. Wasn't it common knowledge that fire was weak to earth? Just what the hell was the dude thinking? Not only him, but the rest of the players were equally foolish, as their attacks wouldn't reach the Guardian anyway. The only way to attack was through melee damage, but obviously, none of them were willing to get that close. Turning to Dwayne, Jeong reminded his boo not to advance recklessly. He should first gather souls and level up his skills. When they had enough, they'd attack together. The desperate battle continued. Players dropped like flies as the behemoth rampaged through the room. In a final act of desperation, one player hurled a lightning attack at the creature, hoping to break through its defenses. But just like fire, lightning was weak to earth. The Guardian brushed it off with ease, yeeting the poor fool into oblivion. The rest of the players, capitalizing on the Guardian's distraction, froze its feet, effectively pausing its momentum. Mark, thrilled by their teamwork, signaled for everyone to attack. The players, blindly trusting their leader, charged at the behemoth with their weapons at the ready. The fiend, however, proved more cunning than they'd thought. After baiting the players to close the distance, the Guardian swiftly initiated its counterattack. With a mighty slam, the Guardian blitzed the players, sending their pathetic corpses flying. Even this wasn't enough for the fiend. It comboed the slam with a punch attack, easily reducing the players to bloody pulps. In an overwhelming show of power, the Guardian punched the shit out of the players. Wherever its fists went, lives were reaped, powerless to stop it. Jeong Hyeok, still on his scavenger hunt, stealthily made his way around the room, collecting as many souls as he could. Sure, it was grim to capitalize on the dead like that, but what choice did he have? He had to get stronger, no matter the method. As he was reaping the souls, Jeong stumbled upon a wounded Chad barely clinging to life. In a broken voice, the man begged for mercy, the pain too much to endure. Jeong Hyeok, always a merciful Chad, immediately complied. Drawing his sword, he promised to avenge the man. The unfortunate man, although weak, thanked the MC. With that, he could at least rest in peace. Jeong Hyeok, acting on his promise, immediately stabbed the fellow, ending his life. In a silent prayer, he wished the poor soul peace in the afterlife. Upon collecting the man's soul, Jeong noted that his collection was up to 19. Although not a lot, it was enough to at least put up a fight. Turning his attention to the battle, he noticed Mark charging at the Guardian. The brave leader, stealthily approaching the boss, immediately utilized his trump card, Time Bomb. This was an active skill that planted a bomb on a target. Upon activation, the bomb would detonate within 10 seconds. With the task done, Mark swiftly called for everyone to scatter before setting off the bomb. The explosion hit with a deafening boom, dealing significant damage. Excited by its success, the players urged Mark to use the skill again. The boss, although willing, wasn't able to fulfill their demands. The attack wasn't something he could spam indefinitely. This was lag. Cheat abilities weren't allowed. As the players were still hopefully staring at the fallen foe, wishing it wouldn't get back up, the MC's loud voice called out, reminding them to be careful. However, his warning came too late. The boss was already targeting Mark, its giant palm closing in on him. Before he could react, the boss grabbed him by the head, lifting him off the ground. The rest of the players, worried about their leader, shouted his name in desperation. This, however, proved futile, as the foe crushed Mark's head, bathing the ground in his blood. Jeong Hyeok, noting the bleak development, instructed Dwayne to join him in attacking. Since Mark was dead, the rest of the players were bound to collapse. Something needed to be done before that happened. True to his prediction, the behemoth charged at the players, making quick work of them. Without their leader, they were nothing but fodder, falling pathetically with every stomp or punch from the boss. In a show of grotesque savagery, the boss crushed the players into bloody pulps, tearing their bodies apart. Jeong Hyeok cursed at the expected massacre. He'd known this would happen, but he hadn't thought it would happen so quickly. Dwayne, infuriated by the slaughter, decided to make his move. Utilizing his active skill, Strength Increase, he buffed his strength by 50% before charging at the boss. With a booming war cry, he shouted at the cocky rock to eat his black axe. The axe wasn't huge, but she'd said his was the perfect size, so it was all right. Saying so, he struck the boss, chipping away at the beast's stone hide. Not relenting, the gentle giant immediately doubled his assault, showering the boss with a flurry of attacks. Swords might have been ineffective, but his pickaxe was the perfect tool to deal with a stony bastard like that. While he was still glazing himself, the boss threw him a curveball. With frightening speed, the behemoth intercepted his attack, grabbing his arm in a tight grip. Dwayne, shocked by the counterattack, cursed. It seemed he had fucked up. Under the boss's iron grip, Dwayne was forced to let go of his trusty pickaxe. The clanging sound of the pickaxe hitting the ground served as a signal for the boss to initiate its counterattack. Reeling back, the behemoth prepared a killer jab, which it unleashed on Dwayne, with frightening speed. The Chad, now defenseless, watched in horror as the lethal blow neared him. Reacting quickly, he immediately deployed his active skill, Stamp Kick, delivering a nasty kick to the behemoth's leg. The sheer power of the attack sent shockwaves through the room, driving the boss's leg into the concrete floor. Having lost its balance, the behemoth's once lethal jab landed pointlessly into the ground, narrowly missing the trapped Chad. The boss, however, wasn't going to leave empty-handed. Exerting more force, it crushed Dwayne's arm, sending stinging pain through the Chad's body. Dwayne, now with a panicked look on his face, endured the blinding pain. Inwardly, he thanked his strength skill because, without it, the behemoth would have already crushed his arm into a bloody pulp. However, even his skill had a limit, so something needed to be done, and fast. Clenching his fist, Dwayne reeled back before driving a killer hook into the boss's face. The blow left the behemoth reeling, its once majestic defense subtly crumbling. Dwayne, however, wasn't left unscathed. The behemoth wasn't called Megalithic Man for no reason. Its defense was as absurd as you'd expect. As such, even though he was the one who dealt the blow, he still suffered considerable damage to his fist. Noticing he wouldn't last long under those circumstances, Dwayne begged for help from the one person he could rely on, his Poppy and Boo, Lee Jeong Hyeok. Our boy, as if sensing the distress signal from Dwayne, crept up on the boss, his black hammer poised to strike. In a brutal slam, he struck the behemoth straight in the back, sending chips of its defense flying. The force from the blow left the behemoth dazed, forcing it onto its knees. Jeong Hyeok, not relenting, immediately activated his passive skills, strong bones, and tough skin. With the protection of the upgraded skills, he lunged at the boss, his left hook ready. Not wasting time, he swiftly sent the punch flying, driving it deep into the behemoth's body. The boss, left reeling from the punch, finally loosened its grip on Dwayne's arm, giving the Chad a chance to slip away. Jeong, noticing his boo was safe, doubled down on his attack, unleashing a flurry of strikes on the boss's back. With grim determination, he comboed hammer strikes with punch attacks, desperate to bring the boss down. Sure, his fists were burning, and his knuckles were bleeding, but he didn't care. The only thing on his mind was to deliver one more punch to finally bring the bastard down for good. As he was still in his bloody trance, an urgent voice called out, warning him to dodge. Jeong, a little hazy from the bloodthirst, failed to understand what Byung meant. Before he could mull it over, a lethal blow aimed at his head swiftly materialized before him. Jeong Hyeok, cursing the bastard who'd done this, immediately lunged to the side, narrowly dodging the explosive attack. With CHADY agility, similar to our fallen Mommy Garcia, he performed a backflip, landing gracefully on his feet. The rest of the players, noticing the boss was up for grabs, all lunged at the behemoth, their selfish desires overshadowing logic. Jeong Hyeok, watching the bots charge at the boss, immediately understood their reasoning. The fuckers wanted to fulfill the 10% contribution quota issued by the trial. They had no care for Jeong Hyeok, even if he suffered collateral damage. One player even took it a step further, launching a sneak attack on our boy. With a cheesy line from a budget Temu movie, the bot called for Jeong to die. Our boy, shocked by the obvious sneak attack, easily parried his spear attack, leaving him open for a counter. With brutal efficiency, he punched the shit out of the bastard, forcing the poor fool to swallow his own teeth and blood. The MC, not one to show mercy, immediately lunged at the fool. With a sickening crunch, he brought the hammer down on the player's skull, drowning the ground in his blood. Mocking the stupid bastard, Jeong advised him to keep his mouth shut the next time he wanted to ambush someone. Well, he was already dead, so he'd just have to shut his mouth hole in the next life. Turning his attention back to the boss, he wasn't surprised to see the behemoth absolutely annihilating the players. The best way to deal with the stony bastard was to take it down while it was dazed from a sneak attack. But because of the foolish players, that chance was out the window. And now, because of their foolishness, the fiend was hunting them down like sheep, smashing each player into bloody pulps. Dwayne, visibly nervous about the massacre, asked Jeong if they should join. The MC swiftly rejected the idea. There wasn't a need to deliver themselves so willingly to death. They should let the behemoth clap more cheeks. Hopefully, when the numbers thinned out a bit, a chance for a counterattack would open up. For now, they could just watch the show. As fucked up as it was, the sight of the behemoth yeeting the players was a fun show to watch. Taking the moment to teach his baby, Jeong expressed to Dwayne the dangers of trusting the treacherous players. Like he'd seen before, the bastards wouldn't hesitate to attack them if they thought it would be beneficial. In fact, he could bet his right nut that as soon as they took down the boss and were low on HP, the fuckers would instantly attack them. Switching topics, he asked Dwayne about his arm. The gentle giant replied that, although it stung, it wasn't broken. Satisfied with the answer, Jeong told him to prioritize gathering more souls. The foolish players weren't going to take down the boss, so that task would inevitably fall to them. Before it came to that, though, they needed to level up as much as possible. Turning to his second boo, Jeong advised Byung to do the same. Byung, always a submissive boo, immediately complied. With the bothersome tasks out of the way, our boy surveyed the room, seeking to see just how many players had survived. Shockingly, the pantsu mommy had survived. I don't know if it was the collective prayers of all the virgins, or maybe the thong had some OP buff skills. Either way, the walking fan service was still alive and kicking. Speaking of fan service, this unfortunate but busty mommy didn't make it. We didn't get to know her name, but heaven is a better place with her bust around. Our boy, also noticing the hot waifu, immediately turned in her direction. To his shock, however, he wasn't the only one attracted to the big, bouncy soul floating above her chest. Another player also had his eyes on the tempting loot. The two stared each other down in a Mexican standoff before the other player made his move. Utilizing his jump skill, he easily closed the distance to the mommy, his hands ready to grab her bouncy soul. Jeong, however, mocked the foolish Chad. He was so blinded by the loot that he failed to study his surroundings. Pointing to his right, he told the dumbass to look beside him. The bot, craning his neck, was shocked shitless to find the looming figure of the behemoth charging at him. Before he could react, the boss brutally punched off his head, sending his blood and brain matter flying. Skidding to a stop, the behemoth turned to face its next target. Jeong Hyeok. Our boy, unfazed by the menacing foe, stared back at the boss, his gaze resolute. He'd wanted to test the limits of his body, and now was the perfect chance to do so. The boss, enraged by his challenge, swiftly lunged at him, its mighty fist raised for a slam attack. Jeong Hyeok, however, didn't back down. Entering his defense stance, he challenged the bastard to come at him. In a sickening crunch, the boss's punch landed, sending ripples of force through Jeong's body. The MC, with a metallic taste in his mouth, endured the blow, resolute not to back down. Exerting more force, the boss threw the MC back, forcing him to stumble a bit before regaining his balance. Our boy, although battered, stood resolute, his firm gaze unyielding. He had been right to trust his sturdy body. From the looks of it, as long as he wasn't caught lacking, he should be able to fight the behemoth in close combat. With his decision made, Jeong immediately lunged at the behemoth. The time for a sweet counterattack was nigh. The boss, noticing his charge, entered an attacking stance, its fist cocked back to deliver a killer jab. Jeong Hyeok, unbothered by the ready foe, immediately targeted the bastard's head. He would have preferred to attack the already damaged back, but obviously, the fiend wouldn't let him. So, he opted for the next best thing, a brutal bash to the head. Utilizing the hammer, he chipped away a chunk of the boss's face, leaving a nasty scar on its ugly mug. The boss, enraged, countered with a straight jab, sending the MC reeling backward. Although he'd managed to block, the attack still hurt like hell. Jeong couldn't help but curse the bastard for its absurd speed. The boss, as if sharing the same sentiment, eyed the MC with rage, probably wondering where this sturdy motherfucker came from. In a shocking twist, it jumped backward, putting considerable distance between itself and Jeong. The MC, visibly perplexed, wondered what was up with the fiend. It wasn't in its nature to back down, so what the hell was going on? Soon, however, the reason became apparent as the behemoth swiftly turned and targeted the other players instead. Jeong Hyeok, in a self-glazing moment, noticed that the boss found him troublesome to take down. As a result, it opted to attack the weaker players instead, which, honestly, is the biggest compliment you can get as a Chad. After this feat, our boy will be pulling all the boss bitches, including Millennia. Let's turn back time to when Jeong first ate the boss's killer hook. The rest of the players, watching from the sidelines, commented on how monstrous he was. However, in typical L.A.G fashion, the players weren't happy about it. The treacherous bastards plotted to take Jeong down as soon as he finished with the boss. Behind the scheming bastards, Pantsu Mommy made another appearance. With a disdainful look, she eyed the scheming fools, calling them pathetic. I don't want to count my mommies before they hatch, but I'm definitely sensing waifu energy from this babe. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. Resuming time, we see the behemoth charging at the idle players. Obviously, this sudden development caught them off guard, driving most into a panicked frenzy. One bot, feeling cocky, stepped forward to intercept the charging boss. If Jeong could do it, surely he could too, right? Wrong. The behemoth yeeted the fuck out of him, bashing the bastard's face like he owed him money. Done with the brainless fool, the boss turned, seeking its next prey. Its eyes landed on a helpless mommy, and it didn't hesitate to lunge at her. With killer precision, its fist tore through the air, aiming for the poor babe. At that desperate moment, a Chad in shining armor came to her rescue, bashing the shit out of the behemoth and forcing it to backpedal. This brilliant knightly Chad was none other than Dwayne, who'd sensed the damsel's distress and come running. With this, he should be able to collect some thank you cheeks after the fight. Well, assuming the babe survives. This selfless attempt, however, didn't come without consequences. With Jeong's warning, Dwayne turned to find the boss mid-swing, aiming for his chatty face. Acting quickly, Dwayne immediately activated his active skill, hammering. With a grim look, he met the behemoth in a contest of pure power. The clash of fists kicked up a fierce shockwave, sending ripples through the room. Our boy, not backing down, doubled down on the punch, pushing the behemoth backward. However, he also found himself in an awkward situation, having lost his balance. If the boss attacked at that moment, he'd be well and properly screwed. Byung, coming in clutch, swiftly lunged at the boss. With frightening agility, he somersaulted off the boss's head, leaving a nasty stab in its eye. Task done, the nimble Chad landed in a dodge roll, firmly securing his footing. Not bothering to look back, the scared Chad immediately made a run for it. He'd acted to save his new boo, but he'd be damned if he stayed to fight the giant behemoth. While hauling hella cheeks, he shouted at Dwayne to remember he was the one who saved him. If possible, he should put in a good word for him with the major poppy, Jeong Hyeok. The rest of the players, capitalizing on the momentum, launched their attacks at the behemoth, all aiming to blind the bastard. The boss, however, was more cunning than they expected. Using its arm, it easily shielded its eye, preventing the attacks from landing. With savage brutality, the boss counterattacked, charging straight for the players. Jumping up, it gained momentum before crashing down on the poor fools, reducing all of them to meat paste. Unsatisfied with its carnage, it initiated a brutal slaughter, ripping the players into literal pieces. The MC calmly watched all this from the sidelines. Sure, he could have intervened and saved them, but why should he? The bastards had aimed for his life, and he wasn't one to forget such things easily. This was L.A.G. This damn place had its rules. When fucked, you should be ready to fuck harder. After the boss's rampage, we're given some dire statistics. The total number of survivors in the room had been 40. Right now, however, that number had drastically dropped to just 7. And, of course, Pantsu Mommy made it. I'm telling you guys, my waifu senses are tingling. Garcia can finally rest in peace, because a new mommy is coming. Pantsu Mommy. With the annoying hindrances gone, the boys decided to lock in. It was time to seriously face the behemoth. Before that, however, Jeong had some cleanup to do. He asked the Chads to point out the bastards who'd attacked him before. Upon being singled out, Jeong vowed to kill them himself. There was no way he'd let such treacherous bastards live. With that out of the way, the Chads charged at the boss, their bloodlust brimming. The behemoth, sensing the ominous development, immediately lunged at its first target, soon to be Pantsu Mommy. It knew its end was near, so it opted to do as much damage as possible before falling. Jeong Hyeok, however, wasn't going to let it do as it pleased. He'd barely gotten a Garcia replacement. The hell if he'd let her die. The new mommy, not completely helpless, fought back against the behemoth, telling the rock pervert to stay away. Her name turned out to be Anji Ah, a spicy babe from the Asian continent. Her public attribute was a buff to agility when wearing metal equipment. Currently, her highest skill level was 5.